what is the trick to cooking a good lamb heart?
It was my first time cooking it, in all honesty. You can't see it now, but I've got a glucose monitor in the back of my arm.
But I think you did like a mock triathlon in the gym.
I think I was at the gym for about 6 hours. I'm going to have to send a photo for you, link in the podcast. But I know for a fact that if I set my mind to something, it will happen. And my body was just like, what are we doing here? Like a bit of a psychopathic tendency to just put myself through hell every now and then.
Ladies and gentlemen, animals and aliens, welcome to the first episode of my podcast show. This is something I've been planning for several years, and I'm thrilled to finally be embarking upon the journey. To you listening, thank you for joining me on this adventure, and I hope it leads to some awesome places. I've thought many times about who I'd like to join me as my first guest on the show, and every time the same answer has popped into my head. I needed to do the show with my friend James Freemantle. James is a jack of all trades and a master of many. He has a wide array of skill sets, including social media influencer, fitness fanatic, reality TV star, and marketing genius. James is an entrepreneur and the founder of FMG Digital, which I'll let him introduce because he'll definitely do a better job of it than I can. Above all, James is a close friend of mine who inspires me daily to become a better version of myself and is someone I know who adds tremendous value to everyone he interacts with. James, thank you for joining me on my podcast and being the first guest.
Sure, Maddie, thank you for having me. And I think that introduction definitely sets the bar a little bit too high. But yeah, I really appreciate the kind words. And yeah, thanks again for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Of course. I think it might be technically inaccurate to label this as like our first podcast episode. I think we've done so many like half marathon runs and cold ocean dips, and after the end of those conversations we're like, wow, that should have been a podcast, dude. So I'm maybe going to label this as our first recorded podcast, but it's probably not our first time like actually sitting down and having some pretty interesting chats.
For sure. I think for everyone listening as well, we were actually going to plan on going for a run earlier today, and we had to cancel it just due to the fact that we were probably going to have a bit of a discussion and it would have killed all the content for this. So
that aside, and the fact that I'm nowhere near as fit as enough to keep up with you nowadays. But For those that don't know or who haven't followed along your particular journey, how would you describe your background and who makes James who he is?
Weirdly enough, two of my passions, and one being kind of the fitness space and the other one being marketing, had kind of like just intertwined in a weird way. Maybe to give a bit of background as to kind of who I am and where I'm at. I know oftentimes we describe who we are by kind of what we do, which isn't always the case. But maybe to give a bit of background as to kind of what I do and who I am, I guess, in the modern day world, is I kind of first year varsity. I think you either get that first year spread or first year shred. And I was definitely on the latter half of that, going through just a bunch of stuff. And just really kind of dove into fitness at the time. I was also started studying marketing. And through that process, I kind of married the two in the sense that I started creating a bunch of content around kind of fitness content. And through that got into the kind of, I guess you call it influencer space, as much as I hate it. It's in my eyes, I've never like seen myself as that, but definitely like content creator in the space. And through that job, just kind of followed my curiosities and got into the more kind of like paid media space, which is where I'm at now. That was a major process of kind of working for myself, working for other companies, and eventually now kind of having my own business that deals in that, specifically with e-commerce brands. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I do, who I am. I mean, just having arrived here off the bat, I was chatting to Matt about a bunch of like health stats and stuff that I'm kind of looking into at the moment. So I would say that definitely being a health fanatic is at the cornerstone of everything that I do. And yeah, who I am, I would say I've got a moderately above average sense of humor. I hope
moderately.
I hope others can agree. Just a curiosity for like self-development and progress throughout my life. It's been a big kind of driver in what I've done. So
yeah. The last couple of years in particular, you've really head on sort of dove into the world of entrepreneurship and being a business owner yourself, currently running FMG Digital. Tell us a bit about sort of what FMG Digital does and kind of how you're going about building that business and what the process has been like.
For sure. So I started FMG Digital in late 2022, so I think it was about August, September time. I'd actually just been working for a digital marketing agency, just like saw a huge success there, kind of went into the 9 to 5 world. So just a bit of context, I was initially running my own business, and then I kind of lost all confidence in myself, went back to 9 to 5 thinking, like I need to go and gain knowledge from working in the industry, which I definitely did. I picked up a bunch of skills through that, but I think through that process realized that I actually am a lot more capable than I thought I was. And I stepped away from a really, really good high paying job, which I think my family were doing somersaults about, just kind of figuring out really kind of questioning me and really worrying about like if I'd actually made the right decision. Through that process, I started FMG Digital. We're basically an e-commerce growth partner. So we work primarily with actually, funny enough, health and fitness brands. I think it's more kind of my bias for choosing the brands that we do. But really helping e-commerce brands grow their revenue primarily through paid ads. So really helping those brands kind of scale up. How I've been going about building that. Initially, it was just me. I think with anything, we try and bootstrap it and do it as much as we can. Bringing people in through the process. We scaled all the way up to about 12 clients, at which point it was impossible for me to do everything. So we brought more team members in, and now we're going through a process of kind of really building something that I can step away from and grow. Because I think you've experienced the same thing as an entrepreneur. You hit a phase where you can no longer kind of be a part of everything in the business because you limit the growth of that and you become the biggest bottleneck. So really kind of creating systems and processes that allow the business to scale past you. And then you kind of shift from working in the business to working on the business. As cliche as that kind of term has become, it is a very real thing, because essentially if your business can't run without you, it's something I've realized is that you've actually just created a 9 to 5 for yourself. And it's very necessary at times, unless you've got like boatloads of cash and you can just throw it at the problem and you can hire top tier talent off the bat. When you are bootstrapping something with all your own cash, you really have to be very decisive with everything, and every penny counts. I would say that's kind of the process. I probably rambled on more than I should have there, but definitely the process of kind of building up the business.
9 to 5 for yourself, I think, is maybe a bit generous to how many hours you're actually putting in relative to the typical sort of 9 to 5.
Fair
I think oftentimes it ends up being way sort of more. Like you said, setting up the operating procedures and everything like that, so you can be a little bit more hands off is something that's necessary to sort of scale any sort of business, I think. But at least in my perspective, it's really difficult to sort of do. Are you finding it challenging to sort of take the hands off the wheel a little bit and trust other people to sort of execute in your vision, like I'm going to say drive your baby around, so to speak?
No, for sure. I think especially when you have a specific skill set that makes you really good at the service delivery of something specific, it does become incredibly tough to then hand that over to someone. And I think with anything, like any person has a specific way of doing something. And it's not to say that there's a right way or a wrong way, but oftentimes I think especially at the beginning, you're so scared of things going wrong that you like are very hands-on and like everyone must do it your way. You become a bit of like a dictator, and I've definitely felt that. But I think in hindsight, you start to realize that you also shut down a degree of creativity that comes from people who could come in play. So one thing I've learned, it's been I would guess say like kind of a 6-month process of really kind of refining that and figuring out, how do we make the team work best, and how do we get the most efficiency and effectiveness out of them. And I would say a big part of that has been just looking at a whole, figuring out, okay, cool, like this is a system that we need to refine and we need to make, and then creating like literally like a dummy guide for anyone that like we can take someone off the streets, they can come in and they can know exactly how to like do the job. Obviously, we then also hire for like creative flair and to get people to come in and really, give it their own understanding of like I guess the harder skills, like things like psychology, understanding conversion rate, why people buy, and all those specific skills that are needed for, let's say, like e-commerce growth. But at the same time, ensuring that when it comes to actually executing and deliverables that we need from them, there's like a clear set guide of like, okay, cool. When you wake up, log into your computer, do this next, do this next, do this next, to the point that it's basically exactly how you would do it, but it gives room for that creative aspect to come in. But it's tough. Especially when it is your baby and you're the one also like you're bringing in clients and you're trying to maintain them as well. All it takes is for one person to get it wrong and a client to be like, okay, cool, that's me, like I'm done. Especially, you launch an ad that has like an error in it, or you end up kind kind of overspending budget and like they don't get a sale from it because someone isn't doing their job correctly, like that obviously can be quite detrimental, and you get a few angry messages here and there.
Just a couple.
But again, and then it's also your reputation. I think with any business at the beginning, you're quite closely tied to it. So it does, I mean, especially at the beginning, it feels like quite a personal thing when someone doesn't like a service that you provide, or, you know, like someone, I think especially at the beginning, when you don't have sales history, when someone says no to your offer, it's kind of like, well, you know, are they saying no to me? Are they saying no to the business? Like, you know, and I think obviously you learn to like desensitize yourself from that, and you realize that like the business is the business and you are who you are. And I guess that's also a stepping stone to realizing that you can't do everything in the business. You need you need that team to run without you, and for you to kind of focus more on the business development and growth, and, you know, how you can continue to bring out products that the market needs and wants, and ensure that the business never actually becomes irrelevant. Because I think when you're so stuck in the kind of the trenches and the grind of it all, like, yes, it's necessary at first, but you get to a point where then your innovation stops, because now you don't have time to, unless you're working like 18-hour days every day, it becomes very tough to fit that all in. And I mean, even if you are going the route of the 18-hour days, like I found from my personal experience, like the creativity just leaves you. It's like
being sort of working for 18 hours versus working effectively for those hours are very, very different things. If you crafting that hard for that long, some people can maybe maintain it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a couple of months. But I think after the long run, you eventually, your efficiency in those hours will definitely sort of drop. So you have to sort of not set limits for yourself, but I think be effective with how you know that you're getting the best performance out of yourself. So in doing that, there's only so much that you can kind of be doing.
No, for sure.
In obviously the agency sort of space, as a South African in particular, especially as you're now moving into trying to scale your business quite a bit, is it difficult from a South African context to either find people locally or to work with international sort of service providers and people in your business that might not be on the same time scales or time zones as we are?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, when it comes to working in South Africa specifically, there are a lot of limitations. And when I say limitations, it's more an aspect of if you decide to work on, let's say, like a global scale. So for anyone that's trying to launch a business in South Africa, you'll know how hard it is to have a system that can auto bill and charge in foreign currency. So like, for example, a lot of the guys that I know who have businesses overseas or who operate in South Africa, but service companies overseas, will use something like Stripe, which, I mean, as we've both experienced, it's quite literally impossible to get it here unless you set up a business in like the US or the UK, and that becomes a subsidiary of your business. Like, it's incredibly complex to, first of all, do auto billing and then also take foreign payment. So those two factors are, like, I would say, some of the most frustrating ones. We have found workarounds like using platforms like Wise and things like that. But I mean, it's honestly, like, I'm actually on the verge now of setting up a company either in the US or the UK just to facilitate those kind of payments, so we can go after international clients who, I guess, takes me to my second point, which is that although we have had South African clients, we can kind of get to a really nice point where we can build them like nice, juicy retainers, which obviously benefit myself as well as also the team, because without kind of getting into too much, we do have kind of like incentives in the team that allow for everyone to kind of share that I guess, retainer that we get. But that would be that, like, South African businesses, obviously, I mean, especially when you're comparing the two with the exchange rates and I guess the kind of currency arbitrage, it makes a lot more sense to go after, like, let's say companies in the UK or the US, because, I mean, you can mention a retainer of like anywhere from like $2,000 to $5,000 or pounds. And for them, that's a steal, because in order for them to hire someone to do the role in-house, they'd be looking at least like $3,000 or 3,000 pounds per month, which would be a very kind of like averaged income for someone that's living that side, who has like, let's say, the same qualifications as myself, one of my team members. So for them, it makes sense to use an agency like us. And on our side, that ends up being like anywhere from, let's say, like 50 to 100K a month, which, I mean, in South African sense, like, that's someone who's, 100K a month, that's someone who is an incredibly high level employee, or they're working on some kind of commission structure with sales or whatever it is. So
the value arbitrage between earning in dollars or pounds and spending in rands is a great asset that I think our country actually has.
It's crazy. I mean, like, when I'm jumping on sales calls with people and they ask like where I am, I'm always like, oh no, Cape Town, and they're like, oh, I've always heard of it, but I've never been there. I'm like, if you guys want to treat yourself to like the most epic holiday, just come to Cape Town, even if it's like for a week. But I mean, like you'll live like absolute kings and queens, like being able to take your like $1,000, which in here obviously comes to like close to 20K at the moment. You know, you can have a time, you can stay in the nicest hotels, you can buy the best quality food, you can eat out at like the nicest restaurants every night, and it'll probably be the equivalent of kind of living your day to day overseas, in one of those obviously first world countries. So yeah, that's been a big aspect of it. I guess touching on that point as well, one way we've also kind of been able to make it make sense in a South African context is charging what would be, let's say, like a slightly smaller fee than obviously them bringing it in-house for their company, but then also taking some kind of commission basis. So we grow with the client. Also takes a lot more risk off them, and it just puts us in a better space as well, because then we're like, you know what, at the end of the day, we're only winning if you're winning. And I really like that. I think having worked in the agency space for a long time, and being at some really big agencies, I mean, one of the agencies I was at, won't mention names, but we, like, one of my clients, I was able to scale to a point where they were pulling in like 100 million a month, which was crazy. And like obviously the retainers on that are ridiculous. But then we also had clients who, you know, you could see they were putting their absolute life savings in, and we had sales guys who were like promising the world to these people. And then as media buyers, which is where my background comes in, is we would get the accounts and just know for a fact that we can't, like, the product would be terrible, the offer would be just horrible, and they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And you know, you have to kind of put on a face and be like, oh no, the account's going great, it's all fantastic. Meanwhile, I mean, these people have taken out loans and they're taking out savings. So in that case, like that's where our model has worked really well. It's just being able to, you know, approach these clients, whether they're like local or foreign, and just say to them, you know, like, we have the structure. It's kind of like, obviously at the end of the day, like, our team can't take the same risks as myself as a business owner, and they've got to put food on the table. So like that fee really just covers like the cost of having the labor, and the percentage is just kind of like, you know, that's a bonus for myself as an owner, as well as obviously the team get to share that too. So that's been a really cool way, and I think like just a more ethical way of signing clients. I think one thing you definitely realize in the agency space is there are a lot of scumbags out there who they're happy to charge just ridiculous retainers, promise the world, and then if it doesn't go right, they're like, oh, sorry, like, it didn't work, you know. Whereas I think just having had the background that I have, and yeah, I was actually having a chat to another agency owner today about it, and we were just saying, like, it's fun. It's like a two-edged sword when you care too much about like the service delivery that you give to clients. And it ends up being like obviously it's a blessing, because at the end of the day, you're doing what's right. But at the same time, it also sets you back against other agency owners who are willing to just kind of throw integrity under the bus and just charge ridiculous fees with like promising the world and then absolutely nothing about it. So I guess it's a hard industry to work in, but yeah.
I think the world of paid media is quite a tricky one, because it's so directly tied to like metrics and performance, and clients, I think, are, at least in my opinion, are going to be scrutinizing every single penny that you're either spending in an AdSense sort of way, or the fee that they're actually paying you. But I think for a lot of businesses, you can kind of only do so much. You can get people sort of through the door, but if the business isn't doing sort of the right things behind the scenes, they're never going to kind of keep those customers happy and actually get people coming back and grow the way that they want to. How important is it for you to qualify clients or companies before you sort of work with them, and how do you sort of make sure that I'm going to say you're not going to be wasting your time either?
Yeah, for sure. So what we started doing recently, because initially we would just kind of say to the client, you know, this is what we like. This is what we've done for clients in the past. This is what we can possibly do. We would obviously do an audit and highlight things. So be like, you know, we would suggest improving the landing pages, or we would suggest kind of improving your offer, or possibly bundling products together and making it just a lot more like valuable for the price that you charge. So like obviously offering a bit of a discount for like more things. But what we've actually started doing recently is just running them through the pure numbers. So saying, okay, cool, if we were to focus on like this bundle or your average order value, whatever, we work out the cost to deliver that as a percentage, and then we run that into another formula, basically like a giant formula that works out exactly. So if we were to achieve a certain like target ROAS based on this is going to get very technical for people that don't understand it, but if we are able
Hold on, ladies and gentlemen.
It's going to be a lot of, this is paid media math. It's going to be, so basically we figure out the percentage that it costs them to deliver that product to the customer. And then based on that, we can figure out exactly what margin is left. And then after that margin, we ask the client, you know, are you happy to break even on this, given the fact that, like, let's say, for example, like a supplement or a beauty product, there might be a longer lifetime value. So they're happy to, you know, they're happy to acquire at a much like lower rate than, let's say, for example, someone who sells like a piece of tech where someone might only buy it once, so therefore they want to ensure that they're getting an adequate profit from that transaction. So then we basically work out the profit that they would want from that first initial purchase, and then based on that we can then figure out, okay, cool, this is the if we spend, let's say, 100 Rand, we know for a fact that we need to be getting a return of like, let's say, a 2.53 or whatever. So therefore we need, okay, if we spend 100 Rand, we need to be making at least 253 Rand back from like whatever it is that we decide to run the ad for. So we'll run the client through that. We'll also, obviously it's like economies of scale, so depending on the amount of spend that they are willing to put out, we can then show them, okay, cool, with our agency fee attached to this, like let's say for example they only want to spend 5,000 Rand a month, they can quite clearly see, okay, cool, at 5,000 Rand a month, you're running at a loss. But whereas, for example, if you get to the point where, let's say, you decide you're going to spend it up to like 50k a month, then like suddenly, okay, cool, there's like 10 or 15k profit or whatever it is. So yeah, that's one way we've been able to really kind of show them the numbers so that they understand. I think a lot of people don't know their numbers, and like we've actually had it in the past, like I'll be fully transparent, where a clients, we killing it, like we're getting like a return of like 5x on the ads, we're spending like huge amounts of money, but they don't know their numbers on, like they haven't given us the adequate numbers. They've told us, oh no, it's like 50% margin. So we like, okay, cool, like, on paper we're doing well, but then we actually run the costs and we figure out, actually no, when we are running these ads, they're losing money through the process. Obviously lifetime value does kick in because it is a product that people buy frequently, but at the same time, like, they weren't quite aware of that, and like we weren't sure as to what the numbers were. And it's obviously, this was like a couple of years back when we were like just starting, so like kind of late 2022 when we got our first few clients. But I guess that's kind of how we walk them through that process of understanding, what is this actually going to look like for you in the long run.
I think it's so amazing to see how many business owners, and to be fair, it's not necessarily always the fault of the person, but it is their responsibility to be switched on about what is actually going to take to make your business work. Where does it sort of break even and kick into the green, and how can that all be balanced with what you're actually trying to achieve, especially in an ad sort of front?
For sure.
Is it difficult, in your opinion, to maintain in my opinion, I think branding and sales are quite drastically sort of different. You definitely, I think, going to be the expert here. Is it difficult to maintain the integrity of a brand while you're trying to sort of aggressively pursue sales? And how do you kind of strike an equal balance of growing the brand presence long term, but also getting people to, I'm not going to say buy at all costs, but, engage with the product?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, because I think that's exactly right. I think if you go the like lazy approach of marketing, and you're just like, okay, cool, we're just going to run discounts. Like everyone thinks that offer means discount, which it doesn't at all. Like that's where a lot of people fall short, as they go, okay, cool, no, we just have to offer discounts. And then the thing is that brand runs, let's say they decide, oh, okay, cool, first month we're going to run 20% discount. They run the discount for the first month, and then second month they're like, okay, cool, turn the discount off, we want to go back to normal pricing. And then no one buys it, because everyone's like, but I paid 20% less the first time. Like I understand, yes, the product could be incredible, and people are like, okay, fine, 20%, that's fine, I'm happy to take the hit and move into the next one. But the one way that we've really kind of seen a difference with what we do is value pitching. So, looking at let's say the client's products, and figuring out like, how can we position this to be as valuable as possible. So like, if it's we actually had it now with it's a supplement that does like it's like a sleep aid, all like legit natural stuff. But we had some people like complaining, like this is too expensive, whatever. So we actually had an ad running that was a breakdown of all the costs that could be associated if you were to like get every single ingredient yourself. And then we had like that versus the actual cost of the product, and immediately like conversion rate went up, because people realized, okay, no, actually, I'm like not having to buy like $3,000 worth of supplements, and I only have to pay $500, whatever it was, to get the product, and it's going to give me a better sleep. And then also kind of positioning it around the whole idea of like, like, can you actually put a price on a good night's sleep? If you're someone who, even if you, let's say you're spending, let's say you're an employee and you make 30 grand a month, okay, your like daily rate is more than 1,000 Rand a day. So even like positioning it in the case of that is like, if you perform badly like on a day at work, and like that continues for a week, you've technically like, you could be saying goodbye to that 1,000 Rand a day just based on how badly you perform, because you could get fired. And now suddenly like the opportunity cost of having 1,000 Rand a day as opposed to spending $500 bucks once a month is like, it's just astronomical in terms of the difference. So like positioning like that, even like saying small things like, it's actually, if you look at it, 500 Rand a month could only be like, I'm not going to do the maths for it real quick, but it's about 16, 17 Rand a day. So, positioning like that, it's like, oh, but you spend like 50 bucks at Vito on your coffee. So like technically it's not actually that bad. It's 3 times cheaper than what you're already doing. So, just like thinking of cool ways that we can position the product is actually not being too bad in terms of that, or it's just a product that like the benefits and the actual, the lifestyle that they'll get from actually deciding to use it is just like, it's chalk and cheese between what they're paying. So yeah, I guess it comes down to really understanding the customer, and that's everything from like, like literally like their day, like their typical day in their life, as opposed to, like the things that they actually value in their life, understanding what's actually going to like pull them to that, what pain points do they currently experience. So yeah, rather than just having a product that says 20% off, it's really understanding why someone would actually want to buy it, and then creating communications around that, and convincing them that, this is actually what you've been looking for. So yeah, I would say that's probably the best way that you can go about ensuring that your brand's reputation is maintained without having to like heavily discount and slash prices to the point that you now attract the wrong people that never want to buy from you a second time, just due to the fact that like you've discounted it so heavily.
No, I think understanding the needs of the consumer very intimately is also super, super important, like you've been highlighting.
Sure.
To that, I think you've got such a tremendous advantage, especially in the health and fitness space, because that is kind of, I'm not going to say your life, but like it's so much of what you do, and so entrenched in everything from your sort of daily habits. Last month, I believe you completed the Goggins challenge, which named after the legendary David Goggins, the king of hardcore things. How was that? What was that?
So I was initially going to do it, but I got roped into it. And I'm one of those people, if I get challenged to do something, or one of my mates is doing something that maybe seems a bit more hardcore than something I would do, I'm like, you know what, I've got to do this thing. Maybe it's an ego thing, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I gave myself probably like a month or 2 of training. Didn't do it properly. I was really good up until 2 weeks before. And then I just fell off the wagon. Like life happened and things got intense and complicated. We also had like tax year end, and like it was just crazy. But yeah, I decided to do it. In true fashion, it wasn't as easy as, okay, cool, it's just something that's going to happen outside the apartment, whatever. It was all the way in the Eastern Cape, so flew there, got lodging there, but it was really, really epic. It's run by a guy called Drew. He's just absolute legend. He set it up all, and it was actually pretty cool. So part of it, which I didn't realize initially when signing up, but a part of it was to go towards a charity, which is like a bunch of single mothers in Jeffreys Bay. So his mom runs that. So it was really cool. Like, I think especially once you realize the purpose behind the run, you're like, okay, like I've got to do this thing now. But yeah, it was incredibly tough. We landed on the Friday with a race. So for those of you guys who don't know, it's basically, so you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So in total, for like South African people listening, that's about 6.5 Ks. So I think the whole run comes to like, it's just under 80 Ks over the weekend. But yeah, so we arrived there on the Thursday. The running started at 12 o'clock on Friday. So basically you run from 12 o'clock on Friday to your last lap starts at 8 o'clock on Sunday. And then obviously that's your like last 4 hour stint. But anyways, first lap, we get there on the Friday. It's in the Karoo. It's 41 degrees. 41 degrees Celsius. We all looking at each other like, yo, this is going to be... And I think we took off. I had 2 other mates there, and by the end of the run, we all like stopped, checked our watches, and I think we were all like at like heart rates of like over 200. We all dead, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't know if we're gonna finish this thing. And this is like I've done a half Ironman before, so like I've done intense training, I've done endurance, and I know what it takes. And my body was just like, what are we doing here? Anyways, but yeah, I just decided to push through, and it was tough. It was really, really tough. We had some guys on the run with us who, one of the guys there, he's done like 3 full-length Ironman. He does like ultras every month. Like he's insane. Just like, the dude literally, like, he took his shirt off. He had like 3% body fat. He was like ridiculous. And he was like, this is probably one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life. And I think it's very much like the stop-start nature. It's like you run, you stop, all that fatigue sets in, then you got to go again and again and again. And like the sleep as well. It's like, I think I end up getting about 5 hours sleep the whole weekend, which just like your central nervous system by Sunday is just wrecked. Like you're an absolute bit.
So it's 4 miles every 4 hours.
For 48 hours,
for 48 hours. And How long does that on a standard sort of, obviously you have to do that multiple times, but those 4 miles, how long did that actually take you?
So myself, I ran everything under 40 minutes. So
Under 40 minutes. So then it's like three and a bit hours to sort of rest and recuperate and try help hype yourself up for the next one and the next one and the next one.
Exactly. So how it would work, and I mean it was incredibly well organized by Drew and his team, is that you would rock up there. So let's say it basically went from like 12, 4, 8, 12, 4, 8. That was kind of like the cycle, obviously AM, PM. But what would happen is, so let's say your lap started at 4 o'clock. You'd start. For myself, like I'd finish in 40 minutes. And within that hour, they would have some kind of food ready for you. So like if it was around a main meal, obviously it'd be like a nice, like hearty cooked meal. And if it was like between meals, it was generally like a snack, like sometimes like a couple pieces of French toast or, something. And so you would start an hour later, there'd be food ready. And then, so oftentimes let's say come in 40 minutes. There was a pool there. So you jump in the pool, you kind of just like swim a couple of lanes just to loosen up and also just cool down, especially in the afternoon laps because it's ridiculous. So let's say it takes you to that like hour mark. You go eat, then foam roll. So that takes you like, now you're kind of at like, you've kind of been, it's an hour and a half out of your like overall 4 hours. Then you try and get some sleep if you can. So you maybe have like, what's that now? You've got 2.5 hours until the next lap starts. You maybe get like an hour of sleep because you also want to then like, wake up. If you need to go to the loo, go to the loo. If you need to like stretch and warm up for the next lap, then obviously you need more time. And also like, I'm not someone who can just like, okay, cool, nap and like hit the floor.
You're someone I definitely know who prides himself on just having the most amazing and consistent sleep routine. So something like this where it's just completely thrown out the window. Imagine you were like, fuck this.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I think you start to realize like, as Maddie said, like, I mean, I'm one of those people, I can wear a proud badge of honor. Actually, once, like I track everything and like I managed to get 100% sleep score the one time. So like I know how to do this thing properly, and I'm very like, my sleep routine is something that I guard really like sacredly.
I think you've even got a new ring on today about a new sleep tracking
device.
Been
testing it for a week from Ultrahuman. It's super, super cool. I mean, I was geeking out on the stats earlier, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I think in my day to day before doing it, I was like very much, I have to be getting like 8 hours sleep and this has to be happening. Otherwise I can't function like possibly. And it's that whole idea of like, I think especially when you like, let's say you build the perfect morning routine and something goes wrong in that process, it then impacts you that next day. And you're just like, oh no, that's the reason I'm not doing well, whatever.
When one domino falls, then
the whole house comes down.
Yeah.
And I think going through the process and realizing, you are so capable of like just doing so much on so little. I mean, like, yeah, you're running 80 kilometers, you're sleeping for like, some guys only sleep for 3 hours. I was lucky to get 5. But yeah, I mean, you realize that you are capable of so much. And I think coming off the run, like I learned a lot about myself through the whole process. I think the biggest one being, I think most entrepreneurs that I've spoken to have dealt with this at some point, but when you are quite an ambitious person and you've got these big plans in life, and especially with social media today, you see a bunch of guys who are in the same space who are doing amazing things, and they may be doing things that you want to start implementing into your business, and you start getting inspiration from all these guys. It then has like a double-edged sword where suddenly you like, you have so much that you want to do, but not enough hours in the day. And then you start to kind of like doubt yourself because you're like, oh, like I said I was going to do that. I didn't do it. Like, but it's because you're juggling so many glass balls in the air, and you know that the minute that you stop, like something's going to break. And then, yeah, you don't get to things that you need to, like, oh no, yeah, I need to be like filming YouTube content because like, that's going to help us with our like client acquisition, whatever it is. And you don't do it. And then you start to lose confidence in yourself through the process. So I think like, I mean, like I had a moment in the Goggins challenge as well. Like I was not comfortably, but I was running everything under 40 minutes. And then like I had this dialogue in my head. I was like, no, it's fine. Like 45 minutes is okay. Like, it's just mad about finishing. And I'm like, why the fuck am I doubting myself right now? Like I've quite comfortably come in under 40 minutes. Like, why am I giving myself an excuse to, extend this and come in at 45 or like an hour or like, like why am I actually having that narrative in my head? And I caught myself and I was like, no, just because you said 40 minutes now, like you're going to come in like 35 now. And I started like pushing it down more and more. But I think just kind of like reinstilling that confidence in myself was really important, like going through that moment and realizing it. Because I mean, it's been a weird thing. Like since I was a kid, I've always had this like undying belief that if I want to do something, I'll do it. Like I know for a fact if I genuinely commit to it, I will achieve it. And it's always been a narrative. And I think like over the couple of years, I think since COVID, like COVID just threw a spanner in everything. And I think like since that process, it has been almost like not a degrading process, but I definitely realized that I did lose a bit of that confidence in that process.
Where does that confidence and that drive sort of come from?
I mean, I can't like say that it wasn't from my parents. My parents definitely like instilled that confidence in me. They believed in everything I was going to do. I think especially, I mean, my mom, but my dad especially as well. Like he would come to like all my cricket games, my rugby games. He was always there. It's actually, I've got a tattoo of it, if you've seen it under my arm, but it's basically like these tiger's eyes, like these big tiger's eyes. And he was always like, in life, like you've got to have tiger's eyes. And I don't know if it's because he what do you call it, loved like the Rocky movie and it's that whole like eye of the tiger. I don't know if it's because of that, but it really sat with me as a kid, like just having that, like I'm sure you've seen a photo of like a tiger when it like stares, like especially you see those photos on like National Geographic, whatever, but those like very intense eyes, and you just know like with any kind of intensity and focus, you will get to where you want to be. Obviously, like for some, that's a much bigger process and there's a lot more struggle that goes along with that, but yeah, like it's always just been an undying belief in myself that I know for a fact that if I set my mind to something, it will happen. And I think it's like, I mean, it's something that Alex Hormozy says a lot of the time. It's like, it's in life, it's not about like standing in front of a mirror and just shouting affirmations. It's like once you start to do things that you say you're going to do, you build up confidence and you've got like a stack of, evidence of like, I said I was going to like, do my first half marathon. I did it. I said I was going to run a marathon. I did it. I said I was going to start a business. I did it. As opposed to like, if you're always that kind of person who's like, I want to start a business, but then you take 5 years to do it and you're still trying to figure out like, oh, but I need to figure out a name and I need to figure out a logo. And it's like, you constantly, like every day that you decide not to do it, you're then pulling yourself back and you're losing confidence in that process. As opposed to like, if you'd never had the desire to start a business, you probably would have been a lot happier, as opposed to going through that process of like knowing that you need to do something, but not doing anything about it. So yeah, I would say like I mean, it's probably a lot longer answer than I needed to give there, but I would just say like my parents were definitely like the catalyst for it, for sure.
Oh, amazing. And did you manage to stick under the 40-minute sort of target the whole way through? Or?
I did. I actually managed to squeak in, I think I had a 34-minute one as well, which I was, I kind of regretted the lap after that, but yeah, it was a really cool process. It was tough. I'm still recovering from it. I've still got shin splints, which is just like a month and a half later. But yeah, it was a well worth challenge. I don't know if I'll do it again, and I hope Drew's not listening because he kind of wants me to do it again. But yeah, I definitely recommend that anyone try and do something similar, something that's incredibly tough, out of their comfort zone. Because yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a couple of years now, where I just choose one thing and I commit to it for the year, and it's generally something quite physical. In 2022, it was starting a business. 2023, it was doing a half Ironman. This year, it was doing the Goggins challenge. And yeah, I was inspired by this guy called Jesse Seitler, and if I pronounce his surname, I'm incredibly sorry, but he's married to basically the lady who started Spanx, and I've been following him for a while, and he spoke about this concept of a misogi, which is basically choosing something incredibly tough and doing it so that one day that you do it impacts the other 364, 365, depending if we're in a leap year or not, but the rest of the days of that year get impacted by it. So it's kind of that sense of like having the drive towards something that then leaks into all other aspects of your life. And I'm sure you probably felt it. I mean, with the background in like professional swimming as well, it's like when you like training towards something and it's something that you want to do, you often see that it raises the rest of your life, because suddenly you've got this drive, you've got this intensity. You don't want to waste time. If like, let's say you get an invite from friends to be like, oh, let's go drinking, whatever. And you're like, fuck that. Like, I've got a goal. I want to be doing something. I want to be focused. I think once you start to make those decisions, you really start becoming the person you want to be.
I think if you forced to be exceptionally disciplined in one area of your life, then like you said, it's something that permeates into the rest of what you're doing, and it almost allows you an easy excuse to say no to all the other sorry I think it allows you to say no to all the other temptations and other things and other facets of your life, because you say, no, I'm pursuing this one type of goal, and to pursue this goal I need to be disciplined in these other facets of my life. So then it's not a case of, okay, I can just excuse something here or there. It's an easy answer. It's easy to say no because you have a reason for it, and that way you're forced into a pursuit of excellence in other areas of your life that you wouldn't have done otherwise because of the pursuit of that one goal. So I love the way you phrase that, and I think it's very, very relevant to everything that we've been doing.
There's a cliche saying. It's like either you give yourself a routine or life will give you a routine, and it's like that whole idea of like, if you decide to lock into something, obviously, as you said, discipline is so necessary, and there's things that you have to do. You can't skip them. I learned that last year when I did my Ironman. It was like very much about like, you had to like, especially trying to start a business and do that at the same time. It's like, you have to be so intentional with your time. It's like, you've got training set for this time, and work is this, and this. And then also, okay, cool. I have like my girlfriend that I also want to see, and I've got my family and my friends that I also want to see. So with that, I'm like, okay, cool. When I'm with them, I'm so present and like there, because I'm like, this time I want to make the most of, which I think is like, I don't know. I think when you do have purpose in your life, especially when you become busy, and I'm sure we've both felt that in our lives, is that when you're super busy and you've got lots of things you want to do, like as long as you are conscious and aware, and you carve out time for those people that are important, when you spend time with them, you're so much more intentional. You know, you're not on your phone, you're not just like thinking about random stuff, like you're actually there with them experiencing it. And I don't know, I think just when you do set yourself those goals, like your quality of life just goes up exponentially.
Yeah, dinner watching TV versus dinner sitting across each other is sometimes a very different type of time that you're
For
sort of
sure.
spending. And I love that intentionality that you're bringing up. And I think it's a very important thing that I'm trying to be more focused about in my life, but it's challenging to
For sure.
execute on it in every aspect as one. I think you have to be relaxed as well to not I'm going to say overcomplicate every single aspect.
Yes.
You mentioned obviously in this year you did the Goggins challenge, and the year before that you did your half Ironman down in Durban. I was fortunate enough to be, I'm not going to say invited, but invited myself in a couple of your training sessions in the build up to that. Not all of them by any means, but one or two. And that was just another level of training that I saw you going through there. How different was it training for half Ironman versus like other fitness goals?
So I guess before that, to give some context, I'd always kind of had like more of a bodybuilding background. I got into running a little bit, but it's one of those things like the minute you can't skip a session, because the minute you skip a session, your cardio gets whacked, or like you end up, I mean, it happened a few times where, life would happen and I'd maybe, slack off on, let's say, a run. But I'm the kind of person, like if I've missed a run, I'm going to make up for it later. And I think there were some days where like I would look at at the time I had a Garmin, and I'd look and it was like over 100 hours of recovery that I needed after the session, because it's so intense. But yeah, it's one of those things, like I think you just learn to lifting weights. Like I know for like some people it might seem like okay, going to the gym for 30 or 40 minutes might seem like a lot, and obviously everything in life is relative, but like your Ironman training is like a different level. It's like I almost like wished, like when I was doing the Ironman training, I'd be like, oh, all I wish I could do is just go and like lift weights for 30 minutes, because it's like, it's like you can't stop. Like if you've got like a 2K swim, you're going, like you've experienced it. We've done a couple long distance swims together, most of which you put me through my paces, but I think having that, like, it's like, especially in the pool, like there's no music, it's just you're breathing, you're super hyper focused, like you're trying to do the best you can. Some of the long runs and cycles, like you're just trying to like survive, and it's more about like, I think it's that whole idea of like just being able to cope with that pain, and like being able to endure it was very different to like any of the other stuff I'd done in the past. And again, like the time management thing is huge. Like I remember like there's sometimes like you've got like a 3-hour bike followed by a 2-hour run, or like a 5-hour bike you've got to do on the weekend, and like you've been busy all week doing work, and now like obviously you want to spend time with your partner, you want to like see your friends, your family, so yeah, that was really, really, it was tough, but at the same time it also makes you incredibly good at planning, which I quite enjoyed. And yeah, let's just say the big thing, the difference is the cost. All the equipment can quite easily bankrupt you, as well as like all your goos and your entrance fees for all these things. Like, I think anyone has been involved in, especially cycling, is just, it's crazy the cost. Like, I mean, I was very fortunate. I managed to pick up a bike from a friend, and actually after it all sold it and managed to turn a profit, which I think the entrepreneur in me came out. But
Gary Vee would be proud.
Gary Vee would be very proud. But you look at some of the cost of this is like 300,000 Rand for a bike, and then you've got the helmet, the shoes, like you've also then got to transport it, get fittings. Like it's so much logistical stuff involved in it as well. That's just crazy. Like I enjoyed doing it once. I might do one later in life, but for next couple of years, like I don't think I'll be looking at it, just because of like it's a lot. Like I think unless you're going to commit to it fully, I think you can do it like recreationally for fun. Like if it's something that you get a kick out of and it's like something keeps you busy, it's awesome. But I think for like our personalities, I know we're quite similar, but if you have like a personality where you like, I'm like that, is like I want to do the best that I can. Like if I'm going to do something, I'm doing it well. I'm not just there to like smile and like, okay, cool, I get the photo at the end. Like I want to make myself proud through that process. So yeah, I think in that case, when you are training really hard for like a specific outcome, then it's a different level. Like it's intense.
What did your training actually look like on a day to day? Was it quite consistent the whole way through, or how did you go about structuring that and balancing that time allocation with all the other stuff that you had to get done?
So I was lucky. The same friend that sold me the bike, he works for a company called Trainer Road, and it's basically like you put in a bunch of stats, you put in the amount of hours that you can dedicate towards your training, and then it kind of spits out a training plan based on that. And it also links with Garmin, so like based on how you perform in those sessions, it then like adjusts and reconfigures your plan to then fit it. So it gave me like a full plan that I had to follow. Most days were 2 a day, which was quite intense. So like, for example, I would always put the easier session first and then the harder session in the evening. So that way I could like at least focus during the working day. Cause I think like
not be exhausted and like trying to like file off the naps.
Cause if you've had like a 3-hour bike in the morning and suddenly now you've got to go and like sit through a full 12-hour day of sales calls and managing team members, it becomes quite a lot. So that's how I generally did it. I normally do like the quicker sessions, so like do like a swim in the morning or like because the swim obviously in the Ironman is like the shortest period. So just quickly like bang out the swim, get it done, and then like maybe go for like a run in the evening or whatever. But yeah, I tried my best to kind of split that up. Most days were 2 a day. Sometimes it was nice, like you'd get like a brick workout, so you could like have your bike and then immediately jump into a run. But yeah, I would say the amount of clothing you go through is also insane. Like you always just in sports kits and then normal kit and sports kits, it's ridiculous. But the one thing that was amazing was the amount of food that you can eat without gaining weight. So I was like
unlimited buffet,
literally. And I think for most of you like who wouldn't know this, but I was quite a fat kid growing up. Like I was chubby for a bit. So like that, I always tease that like inner fat kid is still in me. So when like food is there, it just lights up and it's like, yes, please. So yeah, being able to just like, just chow huge amounts of food. I remember after a couple of runs, we actually went in Cape Town, there's a spot here called Jason's, which have like the most amazing pastries, but they do this crazy flapjack stack where you get like these 3 like monster flapjacks. And in between it, there's like eggs and bacon, and then you can put syrup on top. And I don't know how many calories like the whole meal is, and also like the risk that it sets you for like diabetes and a bunch of other issues. But like being able to just like go for a run and polish one of those, and then have a pizza later, and like it was crazy. Like it was a lot of fun, but definitely an expensive hobby to have.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it must like double your food budget.
Easily doubling.
No, that's something to consider that doesn't always get factored into any of the like. I think the sports things is like how every other aspect of your life, suddenly the volume's also going to increase. Like you said, simple things like literally just having to do more laundry, having to get more food when you go buy groceries. So you actually have to factor in those time allocations as well, which is silly, but for sure. Kind of valid too.
No, for sure. I think like you said, all aspects. It's like suddenly now you're visiting the deep tissue masseuse. Like if you need it weekly, then weekly, or like once a month. Like your laundry goes up, your food goes up. You've got the cost of all these things. Like I think it's anything you start to realize in life. Like sometimes like less is more when it comes to the quality of your life. And I think it's like, especially as I mean, we've both been through that period of, especially the beginning of like an entrepreneurship journey. You start to realize like how much you need everything to work for you, and realizing like peace comes from almost like getting more from less. And I guess that also, I mean, you start to realize it through these things. It's like you like suddenly consuming all these things, and you've got all this stuff in your life, and it ends up being quite crazy. And you start to realize that like there's almost peace in like simplifying things a little bit.
I like that. I'm gonna write that down as a quote. Peace comes from getting more from less. That should be like on a motivational poster somewhere.
Just get it tattooed across the chest or something.
I remember during your Ironman training, there was one particular day which I like to think that I can be quite competitive and stuff as well, but this was just another level for me of determination and stuff that you went through. I think you did, I don't know if it was a full distance, I'd hope it wasn't, but I think you did like a mock triathlon in the gym. Why? How? What was that about?
So a friend of mine had said like, before you do it, try and simulate a triathlon. And like, I don't know, I think he was kind of like teasing. He was like, oh no, do like the full distance. Like,
just to interrupt you quickly, like a triathlon can be a beautiful, if you're fit enough, it can be a beautiful experience because you're out in nature, you're seeing different things, you're with a bunch of different people, you're exploring, especially on the bike and the run. Like you cover quite a bit of distance, so you see a lot. So it's very stimulating beyond just the physical demands of what it entails.
Yes. And also you get different distance. So you get like sprint triathlons where it's like, 500 meter swim, and then you you do a 20k bike and then like a 5k run, and like it's over within like, I mean, some guys get like, some of the sprints that Oaks do it in under like an hour, which is crazy. But so you can have like different levels to this. But my friend jokingly was like, oh, you should just like, just do a simulation of the half, not expecting me to do it. And then I had actually planned with Maddie and then a couple of other friends to, do sections with them outside. But as it so happens, it ended up, I mean, beautiful Cape Town. It decided to rain and it was crazy wind and stuff.
I think it was horrific weather.
It was terrible. So I was like, well, you know what? I've committed to this thing. I want to do what I said I was going to do. So let me go and use the gym. So yeah, it was quite a process. I think I was at the gym for about 6 hours. I think the staff started to look at me quite weirdly. But yeah, I basically did my 2Ks in the pool. I got out, put my tri-suit on, started on the stationary bike.
Did you have your fancy helmet on as well?
I didn't have the fancy helmet on.
That would have been classic. Like tri-suit in the gym with a fancy helmet would have been.
I'm gonna have to send a photo for you, link in the podcast. but no, so I did my 90Ks on the bike, which is actually, to be honest, 90Ks on a stationary bike, although it's boring as hell, a lot easier than doing it in real life. And then I got on the treadmill and did my half marathon. But I mean, the worst part of this all was, and I know it's a sensitive spot for you. So for those of you guys not listening, I mean, Maddie and I have known each other for years now. Maddie has a thing about paying for parking in certain areas, and so after doing this, I hate it.
I absolutely hate paying for parking. Even if it's like £5, it doesn't make sense for me. It's like a fundamental belief system that I have that it's not okay.
As you can see, we've had a few discussions about this, but essentially, one thing I hadn't taken into consideration when doing this all, and it was probably the talking about cost, the biggest aspect of it, but I get to the station to pay, and this is keeping in mind that the gym has given me a free 2-hour parking. And I get to the thing and it says it's going to be $450 to park.
You're like, this is bullshit.
So I'm like, not a chance of I paying that. Like I've actually just given my soul at the gym. Like there's no chance that I'm going to be paying this. So without incriminating myself too much, and luckily no one knows where it was, but I pushed the intercom and I have to like put on this voice like, sorry, the machine's not working. And I'm like trying to act like the machine's not working. Eventually the lady got so annoyed with me that she just let me through, and it was a big win in my mind. But
the parking bandit strikes again.
I think they're still looking for me. But yeah, it was definitely a process. Yeah, I mean, like that was really leaving your soul in the gym. As you can see, like I do have I like to tease that I have like a bit of a psychopathic tendency to just put myself through hell every now and then. Which is not the worst thing, I guess.
That's so intense, and I was still blown away when you told me you'd actually finished this thing. I was like, how did this guy get through this? Absolutely amazing.
It was all for the kudos on Strava.
Yeah, so on Strava doesn't count. I don't know. You cannot do something like that without having just such an immense sense of self-discipline as like a fundamental cornerstone of what your life is about. How do you think you've managed to instill that in yourself? And for someone who might not necessarily be in the best state, how can they go about putting the building blocks in place to make that sort of foundation fundamental to what they're doing in their lives as well?
So it's a tough one because I don't think by nature I'm necessarily like an incredibly disciplined person. I always tease that I'm actually quite lazy. I just make things very like efficient for me, and I think like it's oftentimes like the achievement of whatever it is that kind of, I guess, inspires and motivates me, or pushes me at the inspiration, motivation of fleeting things, I feel. But the kind of driving force behind anything that I've ever done in my life is oftentimes like it's the idea of achievement at the end of it. And I don't know if it's a deep hatred for myself. I don't know what it comes from, but yeah, I would say like that has often been like the biggest driver in terms of getting, is just knowing that I want to try and achieve it and then getting to it. Because I'm also the complete opposite in the sense of sometimes if I don't really want to do something, I won't do it at all. Like I'll just, like I'm very much like a 0 to 100 type person. But I would say like the discipline aspect comes from just kind of like having a strong sense of why, like knowing, okay, cool. Like, why am I actually doing this? Like, am I trying to prove something to myself? Am I trying to prove something to someone else? Like, and I mean, like either sense, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but I think when you do have a clear sense of why you want to do something, or there's like just a desire for you to want to do it, that's always been like enough for me to kind of just stay disciplined. I also find like just being disciplined with things, it brings a lot more clarity and peace to your life. Like when you like when you aren't disciplined with things, like I mean, as I've mentioned in like just even going through the process of kind of that whole like COVID and doing something as crazy as the Goggins to reinstill it in myself. But like when you say you're going to do something, is like acting on your word. And I think like it's almost like an integrity with self. Is like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. And it's not a sense of like, and that's where the discipline comes in. It's like, in order for me to maintain my identity and to keep being the person that I am, I have to be then acting in accordance with that. So if I want to be like a, like intense fitness guy that like is also an amazing partner to my girlfriend, who's also a strong business leader, who's also a good friend to others, a lot of that also comes down to like, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I'm a man of my word. And in order to do that, I have to have integrity with myself, to have integrity with others. And I think that's, for me, like personally, has been the biggest driver. And I think like putting accountability on yourself to also be there for others in that sense, when you start to look at your life as a whole, it's like the same reason that, I mean, I've actually recently had a ex-colleague who worked with me, and he recently had a kid. And I saw him and I was like, dude, you've lost so much weight. Like, what happened? And he's like, it was the weirdest thing, because like his whole life, he's literally been the kind of guy that just orders like takeaway pizza, like does like a bunch of like just junk food, drinks like 5 monsters a day, like just crazy, like never goes to gym, whatever. And he said like when he had his kid, he just had this like crazy sense of responsibility.
So he found his why.
Basically found his why. His why was given to him. It was kind of like without thinking about it. It was just, as he got his kid, he was like, you know what? I should probably start eating healthy. I should probably start being a good role model. And like immediately that responsibility in order to be there for others and show up for others, it just changed his life. And like now he's in incredible shape compared to where he was. He's exercising regularly. He's showing up more. He's more energetic, and it's crazy to see that change. So I would say for a lot of people, it comes down to just like, figuring out like who can you also take responsibility for, like do you need to provide for your family? Do you need to step up for them? Are you trying to be like an amazing role model for your kids one day? Are you trying to be an amazing partner? Are you trying to be an amazing friend? Are you trying to just show up for yourself? I think for a lot of people, like we've all been through stuff in our life where maybe we haven't felt like we're living up to our potential, or maybe we feel like we could be better, or even in the sense of like you feel like you're destined for more. I think a lot of people are like that. Like you start to realize like we've all had dreams. As kids, you ask any kid, what do you want to be? And it's like, I want to be an astronaut or a fireman or whatever. And it's like, we as humans have a natural, I guess, desire to want to be more than what we are right now. It's the same reason we buy more things. It's like, it's coming back to the whole kind of like e-commerce side of things, but the reason that we always want more in life is to progress, and advertising has become a cornerstone of that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. You want to progress as a person. This is an enabler to live that lifestyle, to be that kind of person. And so yeah, I think if you can really sit with yourself and figure out like, why do I want to change, and what's the kind of person that I want to be, and through that process you think, okay, cool, but if I want to be that kind of person, like actions are always going to speak louder than words. How can I start becoming that person? And for example, if you want to be like if you want to be a kind of hardcore guy, you want to be like a leader, you want to be showing up for people, it's like, what can you do? It's like, okay, cool, wake up early, be neat, dress well, like make your bed, like all the cliche things that people recommend. And not to say that those are all necessary to be that kind of person, but I think just deciding the kind of person you want to be and then acting in accordance with that is a huge game changer in terms of shifting discipline from being more like I have to do it. It's now like a chore, as opposed to being like, okay, this is actually benefiting me in the long run. I realize that if I'm if I'm consistent is probably the better word. If I'm consistent enough with this, I know for a fact, like I will achieve said outcome.
Amazing. And say I'm trying to now go through this journey myself, and I've now highlighted a why for me, and now where from there? Like then I've got to slowly now start putting building blocks in place to live out this why.
For sure.
If, in your opinion, if you had to start kind of from ground zero with every single bad habit in the book, what would be sort of the step one? What's the first thing that you do to start getting the ball rolling?
For sure. I actually got this from a book that I read by Jordan Peterson, and it's basically setting the bar so low that you know for a fact that you can achieve that for, let's say, a week. So like, for example, let's say you're someone that like you wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Not to say 9 o'clock's a bad time. It's all relative and it's all subjective to the kind of person you want to be. But let's say, for example, you always wake up at 9 and you go, okay, cool, I want to be someone who wakes up at 5, and I want to be someone who goes to the gym, and I want to run, or whatever. You now say to yourself, okay, cool, I wake up at 9 the whole time. Like, do I think that for a week I could challenge myself to wake up at 8:45? and then you set your alarm every day for 8:45 and you get out of bed and you go, okay, cool. You know what? That week I woke up 15 minutes earlier. Do you think I can wake up at 8:30 now? And you slowly start to kind of shift that back. And through that process, I mean, it's also, there's a book called Atomic Habits, which is like one of the most kind of famous books by James Clear, is understanding that you can then start to habit stack those things. So like, for example, if now suddenly you've gotten to the point where you're waking up an hour earlier, is maybe for that, you know, like let's say you started at 9, you've now bought yourself an hour in the day. Do you think it would be reasonable to maybe go for a 30-minute walk in that hour time? And then starting to realize how can you start to include more things? So like by buying back the time, now you've got more, you know, you can do more with your day. So how can I now get to the gym? How can I now, you know, maybe if you're wanting to learn a skill or start a business, now you've also, like, if you can continue to shift that time back, you now have an extra hour to start working on, you know, learning a skill or watching YouTube videos, whatever it is. I think as soon as you start to make a definite decision as to what that life is that you want to do and what that kind of person is and where you are right now, it's almost like how can you reverse engineer and then start to create like a step-by-step process, like incrementally, so that it's not just like, you know, suddenly I'm someone who eats junk food. I wake up at 10 a.m. every single morning.
Yeah, and you go cold turkey. I'm going to be, you
exactly.
know.
Throw away everything. I'm eating just like, you know, I'm just eating veggies, meat, whatever. Like I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. Like, yes, you could probably, like there are some people who do that, you know, like they have a slight like sudden shift.
Cold turkey plunge.
They literally realize like, I like hate the person that I am. And therefore, like, I'm going to do everything I can to change that. And you can do that for sure. But I think for most people, it's like understanding, okay, cool, how can I make this something sustainable? Because the worst thing you want to do is suddenly, you know, you do all of those things. You get into a kick where, let's say you go cold turkey and you like you becoming the person you want to be. But for whatever reason, you don't have the patience, or, you know, something comes up, or you maybe like, let's say you hit snooze and you sleep in, whatever, or, you know, you don't go to the gym that day you're supposed to. Is if you let that become like a negative cycle in your life, you then go back to step one again. So, yeah, I would say like setting the bar low, and again, it comes back to that idea of creating small wins for yourself and stacking those, so you have that evidence. Like rather than waking every morning and saying, I'm someone that wakes up early, I'm someone that goes to the gym, I'm someone that does this, and you give all these affirmations, but you don't actually act on any of those things. Like you're just becoming delusional, lying to yourself. And some people are able to trick themselves into delusion, which then turns into action. But I think for most people, it's like, how can you stack up small wins and like almost like habits against yourself to then become the person that you want to be?
No, that's superb. And like I think both trying to be relative high performers in everything that we're kind of pursuing in life, both from a business sense and just generally going through everything, whether it's fitness or whatnot. One thing that I'm really trying to work on is my, not relationship with food, but the type of food that I'm consuming in my diets and stuff like that. I know that you've got a lot of knowledge sort of in the space, and you've tried out quite a few. I'm not going to say extreme dietary fads.
I would say there's some of them.
But you've explored some. How important is diet for you, and what have you tried, and what do you think works best for you particularly?
Okay, cool. So just to give context of how much of a geek I am when it comes to some, actually, you can't see it now, but I've got a glucose monitor in the back of my arm that
James ripped off his shirt as he walked in here, and I was like, okay, this is getting kinky. And then he showed me he's got this thing like embedded in his arm. I was like, what is this thing?
So yeah, I won't show it because it is pretty gnarly, but yeah. So basically, I'm someone that I do take it quite seriously, especially recently.
It's a glucose monitor that you got in.
It's
now,
a glucose monitor. So most people, if you know someone who's diabetic, or whatever, I currently have one in. I'm not, or not to my knowledge, right, just yet. Am I diabetic or anything like that? But I do like to try these funny little hacks and bits and pieces. Like I'm quite obsessed with it. But yeah, I would say, like, it's hard to give blanket advice. Like I'm someone I've tried lots of different things. I went from like, also like when I was a kid, I used to probably like around, I mean, like we've spoken about this, but I did have like a binge eating disorder for a while as well. Like when I was 14, I kind of went through that of just like I would eat like, because I was in the boarding house, I'd get like a bunch of tuck and I'd just eat all my tuck in like a night, and I'd like eat all the sweets, biscuits, like feel horrible. And then the whole week I'd like basically restrict myself to just like meat and veggies and whatever from the boarding house. And like it was just a very toxic cycle to get into mentally. And I got out of that, and then I think as any like teenage kind of like early 20-year-old, you just end up eating like whatever's there, you know, whatever mom and dad make, which I was lucky my parents were always quite healthy, or whatever was at the boarding house. And then if we went out for burgers with mates or pizza, like it's never really a problem. but yeah, I would say like that kind of started in first year. I got into kind of more the bodybuilding scene. It was like chicken, broccoli, rice, like live that out. But it actually got quite bad, like just to give you an idea of like how things can work and how you have to almost be hyper specific to yourself, is like I got really, really bad stomach issues because of that, because I wasn't getting enough variation in my diet. I was eating, like just the same thing pretty much every single day. Like when I tell you I was eating like a dog, I quite literally was eating like a dog. It was the same thing for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Through that process, I think I've explored a lot. I've done keto. I've never really done the vegan thing properly. I think I like meat too much. I've done full blown carnivore.
James loves a steak.
I do love a steak. I've done full blown carnivore, and I think through that process, you kind of figure out what works for you. I always I like to keep it as whole as possible. So like, if I can be eating like a good amount of meat every single day, really high quality and grass fed if I can find it. And then also ensuring that I'm getting like good amount of fruit in, obviously drinking a lot of water, making sure I'm getting electrolytes with that water, like trying to just like figure out exactly like the best mix. And obviously that's come through trial and error. Like it's not like I just woke up and figured it out. I mean, like a cheat code, like if anyone has the cash to do it, you can do a complete blood test. And that's probably like one of the best ones you can do. They obviously, I think you can do it for about 5,000 Rand in South Africa, which it's not terrible, especially given the fact that it can obviously, like especially for people who are struggling with their diets, it can obviously set them ahead. But I would say like what everyone knows kind of what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Like you can feel like I know for a fact, like if I have a pizza, the next day I feel horrible. Like my face is like puffy, I feel tired, like I often end up like waking up feeling quite dehydrated and like a bunch of factors. So yeah, I would say like it comes down to personal preference. I mean, like, and even in my family, like I've got like, and this is the same genetic code. Like I thrive off meat. Like I eat, like you've seen me, like I eat a lot of meat. I'd like supplement with like liver and stuff like that, because I've just seen the benefits of it for myself. But at the same breath, I have family who like meat just doesn't sit well with them, and they've like either vegan or vegetarian or whatever, and that's just how they are, and it works for them. So yeah, I would say like diet especially can be quite personal. But I think with anything, it's like same people who go like, like paleo, vegan, carnivore, whatever it is. I think the closer you can eat to the source and the less ingredients involved in that, the better it's going to benefit you. Because like like something I've been exploring recently is food is information essentially. If you look at it, like same way we have DNA, food has DNA. It has a buildup of whatever it is. Like you can quite easily identify what it is based on its like molecular breakdown. I mean, you've studied biology in another life, but yeah, you come to realize that what you're putting into your body is essentially information, and your body takes that information and decides, okay, cool, how can we use this? And if it's information that's foreign and it's not quite doesn't come from the earth, it's not natural, your body then goes, okay, well, what is this? It's like for example having a friend come over, okay, cool, whatever, and suddenly a stranger shows up at your door. It's like, what do we do with this? Do we let them in? Do we like throw it out? How's it going to impact us? Is the stranger going to come and break all the shit in our house? Like, what's going to happen? And it's, I think also I've been through, I'm as you know, I can be quite into conspiracy theories and a bunch of things without getting too deep into it, but I do like to also look into it and also to see the impact that certain things can have on us. And not to say that I'm perfect, like I also slip up every now and then, but I would say like the best thing is just figure out what works for you. Like kind of everyone knows, if you sit with yourself long enough and you're really kind of conscious of what you eat, you can figure it out. Blood test is always an easy way to do it. But
it was I think you were trying out the carnivore diet in a similar time frame to when you were training for your training for your Ironman, I believe it was similar time frame,
somewhere around just before. I think it actually was, because initially I was going to try and do it, and then I started like including rice and things like that just to help with the carbs. Yeah.
And then we did I think it was like a 20k run or something similar to that, and then we were going to have a breakfast at my place here afterwards. And you rocked up with, was it lamb hearts?
It was lamb hearts. It was
lamb hearts.
Lamb hearts, and we did kidneys as well.
It's very important that we specify lamb hearts. What is the trick to cooking a good lamb heart?
It was my first time cooking it, in all honesty, but we basically just sliced them in half and gave it a good grill. With enough honey and salt, it was quite tasty. And I think also it's important to also note that at the time was also when the Jeffrey Dahmer series had come out on Netflix. So everyone was a bit tender. I think my girlfriend at that time had just had it with me cooking any kind of like organ meats,
because they got a very strong smell.
Literally.
If for someone who hasn't ever eaten any organ meats, what would you describe that taste and texture and smell particularly to be like?
It's So one thing to know is like any organ meat is incredibly mineral dense. So it tastes a little bit like, I mean, as kids, I don't know if maybe I was a weird kid, but like a rock. If you ever had to like suck on a rock, it's got that like very, very metallic, it's a very strong taste. Like immediately your body's a bit like, oof, this is a bit much. And the smell is quite something as well. But I mean, the health benefits are insane. So
Oh no, it's an acquired taste. I'll say that
it
much.
sure is.
I'm going to switch topics here a little bit more over to sort of social media. Particularly when we met, you were, I'm going to say, exceptionally consistent and also quite early in developing quite a strong online social presence, particularly on Instagram. And I know before that you had a bit of a blog going and stuff as well. How did you go about sort of like in any of the other pursuits that you've gone for? How did you go about doing that, structuring that, and how does one really grow an online sort of presence?
For sure. So that was actually quite a unique thing. So how I got into it, so it was the end of first year. So what was it, 20... Yo, man, you're going to have to help me here. I think it was 2017, beginning of 2017. Yeah. I just finished first year. At the time, as I said, I'd kind of gone through a process of like, I mean, I was training really hard. I got to like 8% body fat. Like I was like, on paper, I guess without blowing my own horn, like I was kind of ready to get into fitness modeling, whatever. And I'd had a few of my like girl mates be like, you should consider modeling. And I was like, oh, maybe they're just trying to like, maybe they're just hitting on me, whatever this is. But yeah, I was like, you know what, like, let me just give it a shot. So I applied at a couple of agencies and a few of them like wanted to see me. And I went to one of the big ones here in Cape Town, and the guy was like, dude, listen, like we love your shape and stuff, but like you're too big for modeling. But he's like, I would love to do like some shots. So I shot with him for a bit, and then, yeah, I think it just always kind of the perfect storm to kind of push me into social media. So I had a bunch of content that I'd shot with him. I, at the time, it also got into videography. I'd been watching like the whole of my first year. Like I just was like, like the Steve Cook, Christian Guzman, like all the fitness YouTubers. Like it was like I would get back from varsity after gym. I'd like be sitting eating my meal and just watching YouTube. Like that was my thing every single day, and I was like obsessed with it. So I think at the time I was like not YouTube content, but I wanted to start creating content. And I think it was also like it was a time when content was becoming quite important. I mean, we both at the same time were kind of getting into it without having met at that time yet. We did meet later on, but I think it was like in that year or the next year. But I think at the time like YouTube was kind of cool. Like everyone's getting into it, like into the content creation side of things. So yeah, I tried to like marry just curiosities. Like I was into fitness, I was getting into content. I was like, how do I bring them together, and like where should I share that stuff? And I was like, cool, Instagram. So I started on Instagram, and I was also like, obviously as anyone, you're trying to grow a following, so you're trying to figure out like, what do I do? How do I grow this? And yeah, we basically started investigating some stuff, like how can I actually grow this account, trying different like tactics and hacks and content and whatever. And it was actually at the time I got approached by a brand asset management company in the UK. And at first, like, I'm like, okay, this is a scam. Like, I don't know what's going on. And they were like, well, listen, we want you to consult for us and like basically tell us how you're growing your following, because we have a number of brands. We want to see if we can do the same thing. So I started doing a little bit of work with them, did really well with them, and they decided to eventually fly me out to the UK. So I went to spend like a month there helping them with a bunch of stuff that they do, which also kind of led me into where I am now, I guess. But yeah, through that process, kind of like, again, just following curiosities, figuring it out. And it was so I'd been doing it for about 2 years. It was 2019. And I was like, you know what? I just finished my third year at Stellenbosch doing a bachelor's in commerce. And I was like, you know what, this year, like I want to give it a try. I want to push it. So I did. And I started investing in like some, content creators to come and help me film. So like videographers and stuff to come and film some stuff. And I mean, like we did a thing with the whole, we did actually a video with, I bought a bunch of stuff from Gymshark on Black Friday. And I was like, Maddie, come, let's go shoot a video. And we did like a super cool video, which I actually sent to one of the creative directors at Gymshark. And he was like, okay, cool, let's do a thing. So I worked with Gymshark for a bit as well in that process. But I would say like the biggest lever in terms of growing a following was just figuring out like how can I provide value. And at the time it was also like how can I provide value, but also like understanding social platforms. So at the time it was when Instagram had just introduced the carousels and the save features. And with any platform, like at the end of the day, they want you to use the latest features because obviously like they've just invested a bunch of money. They want to see how it works. So what I did was like, okay, cool. How can I use that latest feature with what I'm doing? And at the time I was creating some fitness content, whatever. So I was like, and I'd seen some guys doing some stuff and I was like, cool, let me, rather than recreate the wheel, let me learn from what's working. And I was like, okay, cool, let me film workouts and I'll like do like a swipe. So everyone's always asking like, how do I look the way that I do? Okay, cool, here's a workout. All that you have to do is like, follow the video and save it and share it with a friend if you want. And because of that, like, and the metrics I was getting and the value I was providing, like that just grew exponentially. So I think I gained like 70,000 followers in like not even 6 months. Like it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And it was like a flywheel. So provide the workouts. And then on top of that, I also provide like cool shots of me like training or gymming or like, even doing some like brand stuff, but they're always like epic shots that I spend a lot of time like just grading and editing and figuring it out. And yeah, like that just created a crazy flywheel to the point that I think I got up to like 110,000 followers or something crazy. But then COVID happened and it's like, how can I keep shooting content? I think also kind of fell out of love a little bit with the process, and then shifted gears to a new business model. But yeah, I would say like the big key takeaway was like, how can you provide value to your audience?
No, I think value is so important. And like you said, value contextualized to the platform is kind of I think the secret sauce, and consistency, obviously, is the secret sauce to actually developing any sort of online persona.
Exactly.
I think it feels at least a little bit like you've gone a little bit quiet on your social platforms during the last couple of years while you've been aggressively pursuing your business endeavors. In your opinion, is that just because of time constraints, or do you feel like you've kind of got to reinvent sort of how you want to portray yourself sort of on social media?
It's an interesting question. I think it was 2019, I kind of decided I'm like, like this like whole social media thing is great. Like got all these followers, but like I haven't monetized it. And I was always like, again, like integrity is a big thing for me. And I was like, I'm not just going to be one of those guys that, makes a like workout PDF and I'm like, oh guys, this is my workout. This is what I do. Like, even if it is, I'm not just going to be like, cool, like this is a workout. I've got no accreditation. I've got no, like I'm not a personal trainer. I don't have any of the degrees or certificates. I was always just a bit like, and for some people they might be like, oh, that's maybe just like pain avoidance and you like avoiding actually going down that path. But for me, it just didn't feel right. So I was like, cool. I want to do this other business model, which was obviously at the time a social media marketing agency where we were doing more like content management and growth for other people. So it did benefit me in that case. Like I was helping other brands grow and manage their socials. But yeah, through that process, I would say like I kind of fell out of love with the whole process. It just, again, like I was like, there's only so many home workouts I can do, especially during the whole lockdown. And I think also you get to a point when you are sharing your whole life all the time, it gets boring. It gets a bit much. There's some things you don't really want to share. I mean, at the time it was the year after I'd lost my dad as well. So there was a lot of like emotions going on, trying to be there for my family and a bunch of other stuff going on. Yeah, it just seemed like a lot. And I was like, I've got other things I'm focusing on. Like that was where all my energy went. And I think through that process, like it's funny because I've changed so much. It's like I was going heavy on content up until like early 2020. If we look back at it now, it's almost been 4 years. So I think it's been weird to almost figure out like what's the next step. And yeah, I've got some plans for what I'm going to be doing, which will primarily be centered around all the businesses that I'm doing now, as well as also showing my lifestyle and what I get up to. Really just kind of focusing on the personal brand element. But yeah, it can be tough. I think once you become known for one thing, there is like a degree of like, oh shit, like what do I do now? Like I'm known as the fitness guy. And I mean, it helps like when I reach out to prospects and they see the following and they can see like I'm a legit person. I'm not just like some rando who's like, pay me whatever to help your business and like I'll disappear. It's more like they can see like I'm legit and I'm trusted by a few people. And like also through it, I've been able to connect with some amazing people across the world that I've never met, but are also just very inspiring people, which is also epic. So
yeah, I think on social media, it's so difficult. Like you said, when you're known for one thing in air quotations, it's very difficult to break out of that and to present different aspects of yourself. And I think there's a lot of pressure that is created to constantly be something and portray something, even if you're not feeling up to it that day, or if you want to pursue something different, or if you're suddenly, life changes and pursuits change, interests change. And how do you go about doing that when there's almost a bit of pressure there? I've found with at least a very similar thing, growing a sort of audience on TikTok. It was also during sort of the 2020 lockdown sort of phase where I had a bit more time on my hands, and I really wanted to pursue and figure out how that platform worked. And a lot of that was, okay, cool, the comedy niche is quite a wide sort of thing, so let me give a full pursuit there. And then before I knew it, it kind of, run off into the distance and was galloping on its own, and I was wearing wigs and doing all sorts of other things, which I can be vaguely funny, but I'm nowhere near that level of eccentricism in my day-to-day life. And trying to then say, okay, cool, this is now the online persona that I've put up, but like this doesn't necessarily reflect everything else that I'm doing in my life. It doesn't show the fitness aspect. It doesn't show the entrepreneurship, the business struggles, and the stuff that I'm actually allocating all my time towards. And in a sense there, it's either the pressure gets too much to be something all the time that the motivation goes away, or the lack of authenticity in reflecting what is organically happening in our sort of lives, I think also eats away at that motivation. As soon as that motivation goes away, then it's very difficult to sort of go about things. I think, it's very exciting, at least for me it was in the initial phases, where it's a kind of pursuit of likes and impressions and kind of chasing those sort of metrics. And like, oh my goodness, like
is crazy.
1,000 people like this. 20,000 people like this. Holy shit, this got 10 million views.
Yeah.
Amazing. And like, it's just a dopamine rush. But once that sort of goes away, and then when the next one happens, the dopamine rush isn't as big. And then the next one happens, the dopamine rush isn't as big. And then all of a sudden, the metrics don't become the shiny object that you're sort of chasing. It has to come from it being a fundamental sort of core part of what you're doing in your life. And when that sort of goes away, it's very, very difficult to sort of stay consistent and actually, keep posting everything the whole time.
I think two things on that. The first is like, again, I think what's interesting, as you said, is like when you are like, I think it's something I've definitely dealt with in my life, is being, and I know you have as well. It's like when you are someone who's very much like achievement focused, is when you hit those metrics, they never quite feel the same. Like whether that's like followers, whether it's money, whether it's like even a time in a race or whatever it is, like they call it like gold medal depression. With people in the Olympics, is the idea that you train like your 4 years to get to the Olympics. It's this whole hype up. You like are crazy nervous. You run your race or you do your thing. You get your gold medal, and then like suddenly it's like, okay, like now what? You expected it to be a lot more. I remember like even like when I wanted to get like my first 10K followers, because you just want that K next to your name, and you're like, oh, like can't wait. And like I hit it. I remember like my friends being more excited about it than I was. And I was like, this feels weird. And then like, again, it was like, okay, but like the next one will feel better. The next one, and it never does. It always feels the same. Like I still remember, I think when I hit like 100K followers, it was like, I was like in Austria with my family, and I was like, okay, but like this is so much more important. Like it doesn't really matter, and I'm sure you probably felt the same thing.
Yeah, you kind of like in the whole wind up, especially when you're starting this sort of thing, you think, okay, cool, this metric is the thing that we need to get to. And when you get there, life is going to be different. It's going to change. I'm going to feel different. I'm going to have made it. And like on TikTok, because my growth happened quite a bit, and it was during lockdown in 2020, so we were quite sort of isolated, crossing over the 1 million follower sort of threshold. I was sitting on my bed eating a bag of chips and I was sort of scrolling. I was like, hey, this is getting quite close. And then for half an hour, I think I sort of sat there, because I was lucky that videos were sort of taking off, so the growth was quite quick. And then all of a sudden the number sort of changed, and I was like, okay, here's another chip. I was like, nothing really changed there. So
people did start recognizing you in shopping centers when we could eventually get out the house.
No, true that. So I mean, that was weird, but nothing fundamentally about sort of myself at least changed. It was very much, okay, cool, now what? What's the why? Why am I doing this? It's not for the number, because the number didn't actually change much. It was exciting and stuff, a little bit of a dopamine rush, but it's not going to kind of keep the ball rolling. And I think what you said earlier was so nice, and I really like that, and I'm trying to do a lot more of that, is constantly managing to provide value for the people engaging with stuff, because I think that's something that is quite consistent as a motivator, is seeing people getting value from what you're putting out and seeing their lives maybe become better, even if it's just giving them a smile. It doesn't have to be something that gives them the secret sauce to make $10 million overnight.
Yes.
Making their day slightly better, giving them a little tip to help improve their their sleep or their diet or something like that is a very rewarding aspect, and that's something for me that is a big motivator in continually sort of putting stuff out.
100%. I think we also, like the second part I was going to say, is we create these kind of golden cages in our mind, and it's like the reason I say golden cages, because often there's like a validation attached to it. So it's like, if you continue to do it, like obviously it's going to be amazing, like you'll keep getting the dopamine hits, you'll keep getting the brand deals, whatever it is, but it might necessarily not be what you want to be doing. And you see that, like, I think especially with like celebrities or like singers, especially like you see someone like, for example, like a Justin Bieber, it's like there was so much character created around when he was like whatever 13 or 16. I don't even know how old he was when he started, but it was very much like that was his image. And then suddenly he like goes through this crazy like revolt and turns into like, you know, he's fully tattooed, he's like this bad boy, whatever. And it's like it almost becomes like a retaliation against the system to change. And I think obviously this is on a smaller scale in the sense that neither of us went through it's something so hectic, but I guess it does also create like in your mind, you're like, oh, but I can't change. Everyone knows me for this. Like people aren't going to like who I'm going to be. Maybe I'm going to lose followers. Maybe this is going to happen. But again, like it's a big thing. It's like everything's always 10 times worse in your mind. And like sometimes you'll talk yourself out of something purely because of like circumstantial stuff where you're like, oh no, but this could happen and this might happen, but you don't actually know. And I think it's a quote that I really love, and it's something that it was on a Chris Williamson podcast. He said it's like the magic is in the work that you're avoiding, and sometimes it's as simple as like, you know, changing lanes and deciding to be true and authentic to yourself and like follow a path that's meant for you. I mean, you see it with guys like a guy like Jake Paul. You know, he was known as this like prank kid, and that's what he did, and now he's becoming more and more like a respected professional boxer, which is crazy. And like essentially he's still kind of like the showman and it's what he does, but he shifted gears completely as to who he was initially. And I think it's natural, like as people we progress and our lives change, and I think it's almost like it must be one of the most depressing things to be stuck in a position where it pays well and like life is smooth and it's comfortable, but you hate the person that you have to be to do that. I think that's probably not to say like that either of our situations are quite like that, but I think you can quite easily get caught in a trap of like becoming someone that you need to be in order to either keep people around you happy or, you know, keep income coming in or whatever it is. Like I know, like actually I was having a chat to one of my brothers, and he realized like even just moving, I know it's probably a bit of a tangent, but he went to Barcelona for a bit, and like he had a like amazing group of friends, but he said like being able to just kind of break away and kind of become the person that he wanted to be without the pressure of having to be someone for his friends, for what they knew him as. And he was actually quite scared coming back. He was like, shit, like, you know, are my friends going to still accept me? What's going to happen? And like, I mean, they're his mates, like they all accepted him. And I think he had created such a narrative in his head that could create more stress than needed to be. But I think realizing that like the minute that you're authentic to yourself, the people that are meant for you and the things that are owed to you in life will come to you. You know what I mean? It's a sense of like, I think authenticity will always bring you not only peace, happiness, but also like prosperity in anything.
True. And I think that's also the only thing that can really keep the longevity going as well. One of the, I don't know if this is a weird way to phrase it, but one of the things that's been nice for me to think about is that end of the day, nobody really gives a shit.
Yeah.
So the only one who's really, really, really caring about any of this stuff, especially in a social media sort of world, is probably me.
Yeah.
And you know, no one else really cares. Like they're not gonna. It's not like drastically altering the fundamental core of what their lives are about. So
for sure.
Worst that happens is someone sees something and is like, "That's weird."
Literally. I mean, like Alex Hormozy, actually, like I love the guy and his analogies. He had a thing about, it was when the Queen of England died. And he was kind of like, you know, obviously it was obviously the big thing when it happened, and like she's probably one of the most famous people in the world. She's known like she's up there with like, let's say, the top 10 or 20 people that are most famous across the world. And I think he waited like it was a week or two, and then he posted a tweet and he was like, how many times did you think about the Queen this week? He's like, probably 0. And that just goes to show like someone who was way more famous than you, knew more people, like, you know, shook more hands, kissed more babies, whatever it was, like you haven't even thought about them in the last week or whatever it is. But like, you're so worried about what people are going to think about you. And it's like starting to realize that, like, I think especially when you can zoom out and you realize like you're literally one of 7 billion people, like, yeah, like obviously there's a uniqueness to that, but at the same time, it's like no one really cares. And I think you also start to realize like we all care so much more about our own lives than what's going on. Like, yes, we just, as humans, we like have an inclination to like skinner and gossip and, you know, chat about certain things, but at the end of the day, it's generally like a projection of what's going on for us. And it's like we will always take the side of whatever that is. But understanding that at the end of the day, it's just like it's your life, you know, like if someone's going to judge you for it, like, are they actually supposed to be in your circle, you know? And like, and if so, like maybe it's just you want to change circles. That's also a thing. But I think it can be scary, but the moment that you decide to kind of take that approach, like the peace that you get in life is just so much better. It's so much better.
all that being said, I still think social media in particular is such a powerful tool.
For sure.
So it's got an immense use case beyond just how people feel about it as influencers or brands or whatnot. I think it's got immense potential, and it's just drastically, I think it's globalized the way that storytelling happens now. It's just everything is connected. There's just such a overproduction of everything that there's just like it's just enormous. Obviously, you'll know as the brand and marketing guy how much it's impacted our lives.
I mean, we're seeing it now. So in the e-commerce space, I mean, there's a guy like I don't know if you've seen the guy Brian Johnson, that dude who's trying to live to like whatever it is, like crazy. He's got that thing called the blueprint where he's
cheating death somehow.
Exactly, getting blood transfusions from his son and all this crazy stuff. But I mean, even someone like that, like obviously he wasn't in the public eye for a long time. He was incredibly successful. He sold businesses for like multiple million, close to $1 billion valuations. He recently has obviously become a lot more public, and he's trying to build out a personal following, and obviously he's trying to push this thing that he's got. And I mean, even with him, they had their first day. They've just recently launched an e-commerce brand. First day of business, they did $2 million in sales. Everything was on a subscription, so technically the business has a $20 million valuation on its first day of launch, which is just unheard of. It's crazy, and that's all been for a personal brand. You have the Kardashian and Jenner sisters are the same. I mean, like you had recently Courtney also, she released some brand called Lemmy Live or Lemmy something. They're supplements. Apparently they're absolute trash. They don't do anything, but the aesthetic of the brand, her personal brand, everything is like also allowed the brand to be like a multi-million-dollar brand. All just through personal branding and having a specific perception in the public eye. It's crazy.
One of the biggest brands for me there that like kind of, I'm not going to say started it, but was one of the big things at least that I've sort of focused on, was something like Gymshark.
Yeah.
Like they just built a tremendous business. I'm not going to say on social media, but through a large use of people's sort of online personas and the following sort of that.
100%.
Well, you've obviously worked with quite a few different brands, I'm going to say as an influencer, so to speak, across the years. And for me, one of the most impressive was the little venture that you had with sort of Gymshark. You described earlier how it didn't just come into being and it didn't just land in your lap. You worked for it in a sense. Sure. What is the process of that, and how did you go about sort of reaching out to a brand that I know that you looked up to and respected a lot?
For sure. So I think one thing, especially when you are promoting a product, is really believing in the product. And that was the thing. So I'd always admired the brand. I was like, this is so sick. Like I really want some stuff. And I think it was 2018 Black Friday. I was like, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to buy some Gymshark stuff. So I bought some stuff. And I was like, you know what? Like, I reached out to Maddie. I'm like, dude, let's make some content for them. So we made like some videos. I had like taken some photos. And then we reached out to the brand, just being like, you know, this is some stuff that we could potentially produce for you. Like, would you guys be interested? Reached out to Noel, who's actually the creative director, and managed to get hold of him. I don't know how, but he saw the message, saw the video. He's like, this is sick. Put us in contact with someone. And then, it was a really cool process. I must say, like, at the time, it was really sick. Like, they gave me like my own like personal assistant type dude who would like, his name's Sam. Shout out to Sam. He was such a legend. He would literally send me a message like, cool, like what kind of stuff can we send you this week? Like, kind of working with me on storyboarding ideas. And it was a really, really cool process. But yeah, again, like you needed you had to show value up front. And I think that's with anything. I think even today, like if you're trying to get a job, it's like try and show as much value up front and that's the guy who wins, or the guy or girl who wins is the person that can put more value than the next, whether that's through a degree or something you've accomplished, whatever, or it's something like showing like the person or the brand exactly what you can do for them. I think that's the way to go about it. I think a lot of people, I see it because we work in a number of e-commerce brands now, but a lot of people just DM our clients being like, oh, can I be an affiliate? Can I be an ambassador? Like, please, can I create content for you? And it's like, cool, but then buy the product and just make it. Like, what's stopping you from actively, engaging with the brand, pursuing with the brand, and then like if something develops long term, then that's fantastic. Like obviously, like it's one thing to buy the brand, but then you've got to have the skill set to stand out. And I think it's like once you can combine that two, you become incredibly valuable, as opposed to kind of being like I hate to say, but like you can be like a brand slut, where it's just like you're reaching out to brands, you deliver like very average content, and the brand actually ends up having a negative experience with you. Rather provide some value up front. Just like basically like give them more than what they're getting from you, and that's where you'll get the most kind of the beneficial partnerships and relationships.
Yeah, and people aren't stupid either. Like they see through things quite easily. If you, like you said, in a brand slut kind of thing, just doing it for the sake of it and looking for a cash check. I think if you, like you said, living authentically and representing their brand and what you're doing already and providing value to them before they even sort of reach out to you, it's a much better relationship that you're going to have with them.
For sure.
And that you can actually convey to sort of other people.
For sure.
One thing about that whole sort of process that you went through with Gymshark, which was so amazing to me, and I wanted to sort of get your take on it, is that the moment that you sort of, all that hard work, I'm not going to say paid off, but got recognized at least by that brand, in my opinion, one of the first things that you did was try give back to a lot of other people in your life. Like you immediately sort of hired me to help you make a video and paid me for that from everything in Gymshark. I think you gave away quite a few of the items to people close sort of in your lives. And that was like step one that you sort of went to. Why was that sort of the approach rather than, yes, I've made it, this is my celebration sort of thing? Why did you just immediately sort of get everyone else involved and almost like give it away?
I don't know. It was just, I think it was placed on my heart at the time. I think my family especially had been through like a lot with like the loss of my dad, and there was a lot going on, and for me, like they've always been incredibly supportive. So like I took a little bit. I think I got my mom like a little necklace. I got my brothers like sneakers, and I think also because I mean in the years building up to that, like my brothers were always the ones to be like, I'd set the camera up and I'd be like, I mean I think they were so over me. That was basically like the equivalent of like like the Instagram girlfriend that they had to deal with for a couple of years before that, and they'd always have to take the photos and help me take like a bunch of different takes. So I think I was really grateful for them. Obviously people in my life, like for example like guys like you who had really helped me with content, like free of charge, never asked for anything. Like I don't know, it just felt necessary to involve everyone in the process. I think I'm very much like I've always been like that. It's like if people have been a part of the process of me getting there, like I obviously want to give back and show my thanks, because I mean, ultimately, like you're nothing without the people around you. It's like, as much as you can say like, oh, like I worked hard or I did this. It's like, yes, but like also like, for example, I, even when starting my businesses, I was living at home. My mom was, letting me live there rent free, making sure there was food in the fridge. Like with anything, like it's like you can really, if you really look back at any situation, you start to realize how grateful you should be for people around you. And if you can do a little bit to give back, like, it's like, I'm never going to be able to give back any of the things that especially my parents did for me growing up, like it's, if you really had to look at every single moment and them being there for me and sacrificing for me, like I can never, as much as like I could literally buy them, like if I wanted to buy them a mansion whenever, like, and save up for that, like it still wouldn't mean what they gave, if that makes sense. And I think it's the same with friendship. It's the same with people around you. It's like that, like genuine kindness to help without expectation of anything. Like that's almost more valuable than the service that they're offering, if that makes sense.
No, the celebration of those who have helped you sort of get somewhere, it's never, even if it's a lot of it, and it's obviously almost 100% going to be your own sort of hard work when you pursue a goal and try to do something, but there are always people around you that sort of support that sort of structure, and showing gratitude and thanks to them is such a meaningful sort of thing. So I just kind of wanted to point it out to just say how meaningful that was sort of to me in that sort of moment, and to anyone else sort of engaging with this, how powerful a tool like that when you sort of win, dragging people sort of along with you and allowing everyone to win with you, and not celebrating your victories necessarily only entirely as your own. Obviously, appreciate your hard work and revel in the moment, but not forgetting who kind of helped you get there and all the steps that helped to accomplish something, I think is just an amazing tool that has a very lasting impact on the people on the other side of that. So it was just something I wanted to make sure that was known to you, that I really appreciated, and something that I'm going to try and emulate at least in my life where I can.
Appreciate it, and that means a lot. I think anything, it's like if you're the only one celebrating, it's incredibly lonely. It's like, like anything is way better had. Like even like you go to like a Michelin star restaurant or whatever, if you're sitting by yourself, it sucks. It's obviously the food's probably going to be good, but it's going to suck. And it's the same with like in life. It's like when you start to experience these things, it's amazing to have someone there. I mean, like even with my Ironman, I was really fortunate to have a mate there to be there with, because I mean, I think it would have been like pretty average, finishing this race and suddenly it's just you. It's like, okay, cool. Like what next? And, I mean, in life, it's like, I think it's one of those things, and it's, I don't know. I think it's just anything is always better shared together, I think.
No, for sure. One weird thing that you mentioned, sort of the Michelin restaurant and getting somewhere. One thing I've always wanted to try, and I'm not sure if it's just a crazy, absurd idea, is, and I haven't had the guts to actually go out and do it, or haven't forced myself to make the time, but I really want to force myself to go to a couple of restaurants. They don't have to be nice or amazing, but I want to go to dinner by myself. I just want to, it might look absolutely psychotic, but I want to go and see if without a phone or any other sort of distractions, particularly a dinner sort of environment, because that's something that you generally always do socially and never with other people. I don't really know if it's going to have the psychological reward or impact that I'm hoping it will have. But I want to go and have a couple of dinners by myself and just sit through that whole experience and have a date with me.
That's interesting. What motivated you to want to do that?
I've absolutely no idea. I just always thought it would be a really interesting thing to do, because nowadays everyone that goes to a restaurant or any sort of topic, you're not really there. You're not really in the moment a lot of the time. So either if you're alone or waiting for someone to come on a date, or for your girlfriend or anyone else to arrive, you're sitting on your phone sort of waiting for them, or you're working on a laptop or doing something like that. And I feel like that would be such a socially unconventional challenge to try and do that it would, I think, at least make me think some interesting thoughts during the process.
For sure. I've had it once or twice now where I've been out, my phone's died or something, and I want to go for a coffee or like, but I always realize that, like, especially I've done it once or twice where I eat alone, but then it's like, you almost like rush the meal. It happened to me the other day. I was supposed to, I was somewhere at the waterfront or something, and I was getting a haircut. And afterwards I was like, you know what, I'm quite hungry. I'm going to go to like Tasha's, which, as you know, is like one of my favorite places. And I went to, I think my whole meal took me like 15 minutes. I literally ordered everything together. It came, I ate. I was like, cool, paid the bill and went. Like but it's crazy, like what that does to you is like you start to realize, like as people, we are so like used to just being like it's almost become normal, you know. You're sitting in traffic, like you're not just gonna, like, let's say you're in your car and you're in traffic and your phone's next to you. Like if you stop at a robot or whatever, you're gonna like whip out your phone and check Instagram, or like check if you got any messages, or reply to emails, or check emails, whatever. You start to realize like we are constantly just having like stuff come at us the whole time. Like it's actually quite intense. And I think especially like if you're the kind of person that like first thing in the morning you open up your phone, it's like that just starts like from like the first second you're awake, it's just like you've just got stuff coming at you.
Just information overload, just
insane. And I think that's just like as people, we start to like we are like currently living in a time where people feel more stressed. You feel like people are feeling more tired, and it's like because there's just so much coming at you at the whole time. It's like information after information, and you're seeing other people's lives, and you know it's insane. Like that, I think it's like humans, we were never really meant for this. It's like, you know, we way back when, before tech, we grew up in these little communities of people where you maybe knew 1,000 people at most, and that was your reference of the world. And now we like living in an age where, you know, suddenly you open up your phone and you're seeing someone he's a guy talking, like driving a car in Russia, and he's like doing donuts around a racing track, and then there's someone giving you information from the UK, and then you see a riot happening in the US, and then suddenly there's been an earthquake or a tsunami in the East, and it's like you have exposure to all of this all the time, which is just, if you actually think about it, it's crazy. And I think I remember reading in, I think it's in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, he talks about the idea of globalization, and how like when you sit down to have a meal, if you really think about it, it's like you having like, let's say like a bratwurst from Germany that's like, it might have not been made in Germany, but that concept comes from Germany. You then have like maybe grapes that have been imported from Spain. You have like, I don't know, pineapple that's come from like, I don't know where. There's avocados that have come from like the America side. And it's crazy. You sit down and you have this meal. You got, cheeses that have come from France. And like you sit down, then all this food has arrived at your plate in one moment. And I think that idea is just, it's actually pretty crazy if you think about like, from a technological standpoint, like where we are today.
Yeah, the whole culmination of just globalization at scale. It's just
mad.
There's very limited times where any of us are truly on our own or unimpacted by everything else sort of going on. Which brings me to one thing I've been curious to ask you about for a while, or at least go back to one stage where I know you definitely didn't have an ounce of alone time. Was your reality TV episode on Love Island and the experience there?
Well, I mean, I think it says a lot if I was the first person off, but yeah, it was quite something.
When that was 2021,
beginning of 2021. So it all started. When did it actually? I applied. Just kind of like let me do something different out of the comfort zone. Maybe that was I think that ended up being my like 2020 like uncomfortable moment. Like now it's a Goggins challenge, but there it was that.
What were your expectations of something like that, and what you were looking to sort of get out of the whole experience versus what actually sort of materialized, the reality of what it was?
For sure. So I think most people are familiar with the concept of Love Island, but Yeah, for me, I think I'd seen the UK one, and I was like, well, like being a marketing person that I am, I'm like the reach and the like impressions you would get off a thing like this is just crazy. Like in order for you to actually pay to get that exposure, like you would need a very big budget.
Yeah, you basically got free reign to just have the world watch you.
Quite
And
literally.
You can
So
hopefully say whatever you want to say.
I was like the potential benefit versus the negative of this. I was like, it would be like it's you can't really like debate it, as long as you obviously maintain your integrity and you still are a decent person in there. So yeah, that was my expectation going in. Obviously, for anyone that did watch the South African version, it was a bit of a clusterfuck to be honest. Yeah, it didn't quite turn out the way it was supposed to. The production quality was very low. There were a bunch of like actual like issues that they just said, things that were kind of made live that shouldn't be live from some of the cast members. So yeah, I was very fortunate to get out quite early with all of that kind of controversy and drama going on at the time. But yeah, I think I was expecting for it to be something like that. It wasn't. But hey, it's one of those things. You win some, you lose some. I think at the time that was kind of like my big moment to get out of the comfort zone. Like as I said, like now I do like all these like crazy physical things. And at the time, I think that was just something that I wanted to do was different. A few people had said like, give it a bash, like you'll be good on it. And I was like, okay, let's do this thing. But yeah, it was intense. I think you come to realize like, I mean, having cameras on you all the time, like obviously your sleep schedule is like, it's crazy. Like sometimes you're getting like, they keep you up till like 2-3 in the morning and you got to be up at 6 the next day to get enough filming time. So yeah, it was pretty intense. Yeah, all in all, the process, I don't know if I'll do it again, but yeah, actually, I won't do it again. I know for a fact, but it was a cool process. I never. It's one of those things like I'm very much of the opinion like you shouldn't regret things that you do. It's very much like everything is a learning curve. It's that whole like fuck around and find out. It's like going you through that, you kind of figure it out. And I was like, it's just a cool story. One day the kids or the grandkids could ask like, oh, what did like dad or grandpa do? And it's like, oh yeah, he did this and this and this, and he was on this and he did this. And I think it's a cool story to have one day. But yeah.
100%. And the actual sort of being obviously in front of the camera sort of the whole time, that whole behind the scenes sort of process for someone who's obviously only ever, or both myself and anyone maybe watching who's only ever watched these reality TV sort of scenarios, were there any sort of just things that you didn't expect on the back end of everything that you're like, oh, I didn't expect those logistics to be super weird, or for this to be here, or for this process to operate that way? What were some of the sort of unexpected moments in the reality TV scenarios?
So I think the first one we noticed was basically what had happened is as I mentioned, the production, there was a bit of a kind of went tits up. And
could you see that while you were there? Like being filmed, that things were edgy, or did you just assume, okay, cool, they're just doing their thing, this is how it
so
works?
we just assumed like we obviously we can't see anything what's going, so we like completely detached from the outside world, so we don't know what's going on, we don't have access to any information. It's very much like a little tightly kept bubble, and it's a bit like that Jim Carrey movie, I forget the name of it, but he's kind of like
Truman Show.
The Truman Show. It's very much Truman Show situation. And anyways, but I think in the first week, because we had like Hollywood Bets branding everywhere, and then suddenly that got taken down, and we were a bit like, either that was just there for the first few episodes, or like something's going on. So I did start to like, you had like slight suspicions, but yeah, then also like yeah, I think you also realize like how intense it is being watched by cameras for so long. Like there were all these little like motion sensor cameras that were kind of like picking us up as we would move, and like also being asked to like reshoot some like this is a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you're not quite aware of. I think obviously when you watch the show, it's like high pitched music and you see all the little bits and pieces, but you don't realize that there's like a lot going on. Some of the stuff is reshot, some of the stuff is it's not staged, but like you're prompted to have certain discussions and certain things are focused on. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's also like I admire what they're having to do. Like you're having to film, cut, and like basically create a narrative for every single episode, every single day, with less than 24 hours to do it. Like it's insane. Like to think what the guys do, especially like let's say with the UK or the US one, where they have done a really good job of the production. Like it's insane. Like I really have a lot of respect for those guys.
I think it's maybe something similar to like the Drive to Survive Netflix sort of series, about how do they actually go about deciding exactly which narrative and which story to sort of focus on. Because in every single, if you've got 20 cameras, and obviously I think there may be more cameras in that sense, pointed at everything, there are a lot of different things happening. So what do you choose to actually showcase? What's the juicy bits? What do you think is actually going to resonate with everyone watching?
No, it's very hands-on, and you've got less than 24 hours to decide that, cut it up, put it out to the public, because it's every single day, which is insane.
Yeah, no. And I think you obviously approach the show sort of with a marketeer's sort of lens on everything. I feel like that's something that you apply to a lot of aspects sort of your life. I think you came straight out of school and went into studying a marketing degree at Stellenbosch, and then furthered that at Red and Yellow, and then worked for a couple of companies in marketing roles, and now you're obviously running your own business in a marketing sort of sphere. Where did that sort of interest in everything sort of come from, and how did that sort of become an entrenched sort of focus of your life that you live out daily?
Yeah, so I mean, as long as I can remember, I've always like had a business venture or been involved in something. I actually, one of my first businesses was, I had a friend who used to bring in coffee scrub from Australia, and it was like super at the time, like super viral product. I think it was like at the same time when like it was that whole like J. Alvarez era of like what do you call it, like traveling Instagram and stuff. Anyways, so I used to get this coffee scrub, and I was a bit like a beauty drug dealer. I used to take it, cut it into smaller bags, and then sell it to the girls' boarding house, because obviously
not sketchy at all.
Not sketchy at all. And it was obviously they knew the product they're buying. Like, either you guys can buy a full pack, or you can buy like some samples, whatever. So I've always had that kind of brain. So I did that, sold shoes. I helped some friends start a clothing brand. I've had like other ventures in the past, but yeah, I think I've always just kind of looked at that. I've always found the concept of like selling really, really interesting, and how you can position that, or how you can like create a perception in someone's mind in order to get them to take action. And I guess that's marketing in a nutshell, is figuring out how you can position something in order for people to obviously want to buy it. So yeah, I think I've always looked at it like that. And I think I've always just had with anything, it's like, I'm one of those people, I'm quite like, I'm happy to take risks. I don't really mind. But I'm always quite critical in that. So I like stop and I'm like, okay, cool. Is there like net positive to this? Okay, sick. Like, let's go for it, you know? And I think that's always been I think something that's also helped me. I think I like, there are times when I'm a little bit, what's the word for it? Like irrational, and I jump into something. Well, not irrational. I'm more like, what is the word? I don't give it much thought. I just go for it, and I'm like, oh wait, and then later on it bites me. So I think having that critical thinking to be like, you know, this is net positive for me, fantastic, let's go for it.
I'm curious to further understand them, because obviously you've got an immense sort of interest in it, and it's been a large part of small parts of your life throughout your life. But obviously being interested in something and being very adept and skilled at it is another sort of thing. So obviously you've got to go through quite an educational process to actually become someone who's valuable to companies to serve out that skill set. You've had quite a diverse sort of education background in that sense, I think, both from a, like you said, early age entrepreneurial hands-on sort of feel, and then studying at university, studying at different institutions outside of Stellenbosch, and then working in different companies, and your own hands-on experience as an actual entrepreneur, as well as obviously your influencer lens and all the other aspects of your life, and the courses that you've done from other people as well, beyond your university sort of studies. That educational aspect in particular, are there any of those that I've sort of described, or any others I might not have mentioned, that have jumped out to you as being exceptionally valuable to learning the skills that are required to execute on this?
For sure.
What have you find the most rewarding aspect of that in terms of getting actual knowledge and skills that you can take on and implement?
For sure. So I think maybe on the low end of that, like we live in a society where people have like, it's crazy because we have access to answers at a much quicker rate than like our parents had. Like if you have an issue, you can jump on Google, you can search it, and you can find a couple of different options. You can, let's say, for example, you want to know, how do I color grade a video? You go on YouTube, you type in how to color grade on Premiere Pro, or even just how to color grade. You'll see a bunch of different options. You might see someone using a specific platform, and then you can either comment there, or you can go search like, what platform is this, or whatever. You can even take a screenshot and Google reverse search it, whatever. Like there's so much that you can do, but I think a lot of people like stop at that point. It's like, oh, but I don't know how to do that. So like, no. And it's like realizing that you literally, if you want to learn something, you just have to search it and you can find it for free. Yes, there's courses you can pay, and obviously like it's either, I feel like either you pay for time, either you pay in time or you pay in money. And that's the case with anything. It's like whether that's whether you have a business and you need a service done, you can either go and, figure it out yourself and like retile the roof on your house, or you can pay someone to come do it for you. And the same with a course. If you're wanting to learn something, you can either just pay someone for their information, and you can get through the whole process of having to watch terrible YouTube videos and search different blogs and spend hours doing that, obviously to get the outcome that you want. So So yeah, I would say like that's always been a driving force in it. One of the best courses that I've ever done was probably one that I did more recently. It was a big investment. It was like a 200K investment, which is obviously for a lot of people, that's a lot of money. Like, luckily I was able to do it through my business. But that was very much like especially with the business that I'm in now, it was very much geared towards not only like more customer acquisition, but also understanding like the perception shift that you need as a business owner, which was incredibly valuable, gave me access to great mentors. So I think it's one of those things, like if you want to, like in life with anything, if you want to get ahead and you want to learn specific skills and knowledge, it's like being willing to like pay for it in some way, whether it's going to be time or money. You've got to figure that one out. And obviously, like when I first started, like I had nothing, so I was like, okay, cool, let me just watch YouTube, and that's how I'll figure it out. And then obviously through the process, it's like, okay, cool, but like now I have this thing working for me. I need more skills to keep progressing and keep getting better. I don't necessarily have the time, so let me pay for it in money. And you can kind of build that up. But yeah, I think with anything, like obviously there's also a lot of like snake oil salesmen out there as well, especially in modern times where everyone has a course for everything, and a lot of it is terrible. And I think how you can always, it's a good indicator of how good a course is looking at the branding that they have. Sometimes if a course has the most phenomenal, most amazing branding, high production content, I'm not going to name any names because they are, I mean, anyone can figure out who those kind of people are. Sometimes the content is quite basic and it's quite standard and it's not the best.
It's kind of disguising it just with fancy clothes and sparkly hats.
100%. And it's almost like that overcompensation. It's the same way, like you have like, like the whole like small man syndrome. It's like sometimes, and those are the people that have like the most crazy cars and this and this. And it's people that feel like, people that in psychology, you look at people who feel inferior. They're often the ones that go and like they buy the loudest, noisiest cars, and they dress this way, and they need this and they need this in order to like appear as something. And it's the same with the course space. Is you can look at people who they spend huge amount of money on like getting the branding right, like amazing cinematography. It's all about like fancy words and what it looks like, but the actual course itself is absolute crap. And vice versa. Like, I mean, the course that I mentioned earlier, it's actually shout out to Charlie Morgan and his team at Easy Grow. They had like, honestly, it's one of the best courses I've ever done in my life. And it's changed a lot of things for me. But I mean, like literally it's 3-hour videos where Charlie is going through a document. It's a PDF no, it's not even a PDF. It's a Google Doc. And it's a Loom recording of him just talking through the document, going through it. And you start to realize like, that's like actual knowledge, it's actual value, because at the end of the day, like, you know what I mean? He hasn't cut any corners when it comes to the quality. He's made that the focus as opposed to the actual branding of the course, which I think, like, again, it goes back to the whole integrity thing. I think that's incredible if you're going to do something like that.
I love how you phrase sort of you either spending money or you're spending time on getting any sort of educational sort of resources to sit and absorb and get the knowledge from it. You mentioned obviously the Charlie Morgan course has been a very expensive but very rewarding sort of thing that you've done. How would you describe your sort of university experience of that? Obviously, university is not a cheap thing if you don't have a bursary or if it's not sort of sponsored. And obviously, there are a lot of other facets that go into your university experience with the people that you meet and that phase of one's life and growing and being a young person. Do you think you got the same value from the university experience purely from an educational standpoint, or was that not at the same sort of level?
Yeah, I think university. I enjoyed it. It wasn't like for me, it wasn't one of those things. I'm like, oh, I hated it. I didn't want to do my degree. Like I found it boring. Like it was easy, but it was like relatively easy. Like I passed. Like I remember my dad was always on my back. Like you got to be working hard to get this done. I'm like, Dad, I didn't want to go to university. I'm doing this to keep you guys happy. Like, which obviously I'm really grateful that I could be put through university. But I was kind of like, if I pass, I pass. Like anything over a pass is too much effort. Especially because the time I was busy in other ventures. Like I was doing like some consulting. I was trying to grow my following. I was like doing other bits and pieces. So like university was kind of like, it felt like a bit of a waste to me at the time. And I think especially coming out of varsity, you realize that like you get to day one of your first job and it's suddenly like, okay, well, what do I do now? It's like you've got all this knowledge and yeah, I think that's like a real like eye opener. I'm not necessarily like against university. I think it can be great. But I do think you've got to be really real with yourself and figure out like what's your end goal. I think if you want to just be, like if you want to be a 9-to-5 employee and that's all you want in life and you need the degree in order to like, get your foot in the door for an interview, I think that's fantastic. I think if you're a doctor, lawyer, or anything that's highly like professional and specialized where you actually need like the practical training as well, I think that's a big thing, is like when there's practical training tied to it as well, then it's a game changer because now you've learned the theory and you know how to implement it. Whereas like, for example, like the BCom degree I did, like I learned everything you could know about business. I had a lecturer who was teaching me how to be an entrepreneur, but he's never launched a business. And like, that's where you start to see the disconnect and you realize like there's something broken here. So yeah, I would say like, you've got to be honest with yourself and figure out what it is you want. If you want to be an entrepreneur, I don't think university is a good idea. Yes, you could, like, I mean, if you're going to like an Ivy League school and you're meeting like incredible people, and the network you could have off that could be amazing. Like, so you want to start a tech software and you go to like a Princeton or a Stanford or Harvard, the kind of network you could make there in terms of like also figuring out funding and things like that, it could be beneficial 100% if you can afford to do it or you have a bursary. But from a, just like a, I don't know, from a point of like, okay, cool, I want to start a business, or, you know, like, it's not going to benefit you. Like, that's one thing I definitely realized is like, rather take the money you're gonna use for your degree and invest in like a mentor or someone who's actually done what you want to be doing, or invest in a business. Just start and learn as you go, you know. If you, like, let's say, I mean, in South Africa, what a degree is like anywhere from 40 to 80 grand a year. If you can take that money and you can roll it into a business, whether that be, I would say service-based business, probably the best one, because your margins are so good. There's no risk of holding stock, things like that. I think everyone dreams about starting a clothing brand and it's always cool and fun. But I think if you can like stick to something that is like, it's just easy to run, it's easy to bootstrap, there's no initial cost up front. Like, it's such an easy model to get going on.
You've obviously come out of obviously university experience and everything else now, and then you went into the world of, I'm going to say, the 9-to-5 as well, which is an experience that I've never sort of given myself, and I don't know if I have any regrets about it, but I'm definitely curious as to the experience of that. Obviously now I view you kind of I view you as a hardcore sort of entrepreneur. You're going at it, you're building your own thing, and you're doing a tremendous job of it. But you had the experience sort of working a 9-to-5. How have you found those contrasting to each other? What's working versus sort of owning a business? How is it different in terms of the actual day-to-day and how you feel about what you're doing?
For sure. So I mean, I've got nothing against. I quite enjoyed 9-to-5. It is definitely much needed. I almost took it as like, it might sound weird, but I took it as like a break period, because I like the one difference. The biggest difference is like, when you are running your own thing, it's a 24/7. Like, it's always like, where, like, not to say that you're always working, but
there's always something you can be doing to better the business.
100%, and so it's always on your mind. So like, especially when you're dealing with clients, it's like, if a client's portfolio is not doing well, or their campaign's not doing well, you like immediately like, shit, I need to be fixing that. Like, why is this down? You know, like, it's always thinking, like, if there's a problem with like, let's say one of your contractors or employees isn't working well, you're like trying to figure out, okay, what can I do to make it better? How can I be a better leader? How can we make the business better? How can we get more clients? Like, you constantly, as you say, there's like, it's endless tasks. Like, it never stops. So you've got to be very clear as to like, what's my goal right now? What do I need to be doing to be getting to like move the needle forward? And then measuring that continuously. So like, how can you figure out, okay, cool, what's my KPI of like, okay, cool, like, let's say we want to have 20 clients by the end of the year. What do I need to be doing every single day to be getting 20 clients? So like, it's obviously like lots of outreach, sales calls. Like, I need to be tracking all of those metrics in order to get there. And then those are only things that really, really matter. And then anything on top of that is like, you know, okay, cool, this will also help the business, this will help the business. But I think being really, really clear with what you want. And then I would say the biggest change is like, and it's something I've only really realized recently, because especially at the beginning of starting a business, oftentimes like, you're very involved in service delivery and everything you do, but like, a business is only technically a business once you can remove yourself from it. Because up until that point,
I like that way of phrasing. I really like that phrasing. Because
otherwise, I mean, like, you are still kind of like, even if it is your business, like if you're doing everything yourself, you essentially have just like, you're a freelancer. You're not really like a business owner. And I mean, like, people can debate that and have different opinions about it, but I do believe like the biggest shift from being like a business owner to being like, let's say, an employee, is that you move away from execution to like more about like, you know, like steering the ship. So for example, you look at a captain on a boat. The captain's not necessarily, like, even a yacht, the captain's not the one like, you know, pulling masts and moving things and scrubbing the deck, and the captain's the one telling everyone what to do. He's the one steering the ship. He's the one figuring that out. He obviously carries way more responsibility, because if that ship hits something or it goes down, it's on him. It's not on everyone else on the team. It's on him and on his shoulders. So that's how I like to view it a little bit. It's like that mental shift of realizing that as a business owner, it's not necessarily about doing more. It's about being more effective so that everyone else can do their job better.
I love that. And something that I'm trying to learn myself and develop in that sense is obviously in the early stages where you go from to extend your metaphor, working in the engine room on the ship to going up to the steering column. You still have to have quite a good understanding about how to fix the engine and how to paint the side of the ship and what else do ships do? How to maintain the emergency life support vehicles and how to do the taxes for the ship. You have to have, especially in the early stages of entrepreneurship, I think you got to have a very broad sort of skill set to be able to sort of juggle a lot of balls and be the person that catches the shortfall where the rest of your team members can't necessarily make up. I think obviously as we grow, we're going to get more and more out of touch of those small sort of things, particularly in your space and in your business. I think they're going to be things that you always have to be a bit more hands-on and have that intuitive understanding of when the rest of everything sort of keeps growing. What for you are sort of the fundamental things that are, I'm not going to say irreplaceable, but that is critical for any sort of business owner in the marketing, especially the digital marketing space, to have an in-depth sort of knowledge of and a very hands-on sort of feel that they don't necessarily lose touch and just become I'm going to say an antiquated sort of dinosaur before they even really get going.
Yeah, for sure. I think, especially like, let's look at my business model. So what we do is like, essentially we run, if you look at it in a nutshell, we're a growth partner, but what we do is we run paid ads. We help with conversion rate optimization. We help a little bit with email. So essentially we have to, like, as a business owner in my position, I have to understand, why do people buy things? Because at the end of the day, if I don't know why people buy things, like I can't tell my team like how to change copy. I can't tell them how to change ads. I can't communicate that to clients when you work with them. So I have to have industry knowledge first and foremost of what we're actually doing. Second off, I need to be able to, if shit absolutely hits the fan and things are breaking and people are not doing their jobs properly, I need to be able to look at them and know why it's going wrong. So I think having an understanding of actually doing the service yourself, I think that's incredibly valuable, because otherwise you could also get taken for a ride. Like if let's say I knew nothing about running ads and I sign a client saying, oh, we can do this, we're going to change the world for you, we're going to help you retire and you're going to buy an island here, whatever, and I sell this dream to them, and now suddenly I go, okay, shit, but now I don't know how to do it, so I go and hire someone can talk a bunch of stuff that sounds fancy, and I go and pay them $1,500 whatever per month in order to do the service for me, and I take my cut, whatever, and now that person just takes me for a ride. They tell me that they're doing all this stuff, but they're actually doing nothing, or they don't know a lot, but they're just using fancy words, and I'm being taken advantage of, because essentially they're going to get paid regardless, and they don't have to deal with the repercussions of someone coming at their throats and saying, you know what, you've screwed me out of this much money, whatever it is.
Just because you can build a house doesn't mean you can build a skyscraper without sort of getting to know those fundamental things that it takes to make that sort of secret sauce.
Exactly. So I think having an understanding of how to do your service, even a service or your products, is understanding like how that service or product works. I think that's incredibly important. I think that's why it's like, if you're going to start a product-based business, it's really important to understand the industry that you're going to operate in, because then okay, cool, how do I position it? Why would people buy it? You can figure that all out. And as a result, you also understand how it works, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to know how to create the thing, but just understand like essentially what it is. So I'd say that's important. Sales, biggest thing. Your sales is your lifeblood to your business. If you don't know how to sell and you can't get clients, you don't have a business. Like, it doesn't matter if you've registered the company, you've set up an email. If you don't have clients coming in, there's no business to be had. So you have to have that inflow of people, because otherwise the company dies. It's like you just bleed your savings or whatever in order to keep it afloat. So sales is incredibly important. Being able to sell, whether it's to other people, even just a vision, like you have to be able to also sell to people and be like within your team and be like, this is what I envision the company to be. You got to encourage them to want to leave their jobs and come work for you. If you want A-class talent, you've got to be able to do, especially in my case, go and tell someone who's being paid let's say even like $100K a month. I've got to be able to go to them and be like, this is a better job. You might be getting paid less, but there's potential upside with this, and this, and this is what your role could be. And you've got to be able to sell that vision to them. So I would say sales is incredibly important. And then just like people as well, like you've got to be able to like humanize with people. You got to be able to, again, I guess that comes down to a little bit of selling, but like persuade them, tell them why they should be with you. You've got to be able to also manage their emotions better than they can. And yeah, I would say like those are the three, in my opinion, those are the three most important ones. But I think like essentially the whole thing is like, as you started the whole interview with it as well, it's like, it's that whole idea of jack of all trades. And I think a lot of people, like, they misquote the whole thing. It's like jack of all trades, but master of none, rather a master of many than a master of one. And that's incredibly important to know. Is like, as a business owner, I think especially if you're only good at one thing, it can be incredibly limiting, and you can bottleneck yourself quite quickly. Because like, let's say in my case, like I'm an amazing like media buyer and I like kill it with ads and I'm really good at that, but then I can't jump on a sales call because I'd like absolutely like I get heart palpitations and I don't want to do it, and it freaks me out.
Business is not going to work
and
because
I just flop literally, and then I get no clients coming in, so I can't actually prove my service in order to do the sale. So yeah, I think you've got to be pretty like agile, and you've got to have versatility in your business. Otherwise, you do flop and you fall short, and your bottlenecks come quicker than they should. You also then get stuck in a role. Like I recently actually caught myself in it where I was getting back into the media buying process, and I was like, oh shit, I'm actually becoming an employee in my own business again. Like I need to stop. I need to find talent who can replace me, even if it ends up costing me a little bit more in the short term. In the long run, it'll be better for the business. So yeah, I would say that's in essence. Just think about like what's required to make the business work, and are you at least adequate in all of those things? If you aren't, like what can you do to get better at it?
Oh, that's fantastic. And obviously, I think we sometimes, or I definitely get caught up a little bit in the day-to-day and the operations and stuff. I'm constantly trying to draw back from that.
We all do.
And remove it a bit, but it's going to happen. There are fires that you have to fight. It's one of those things. Where to next, especially in your business sense? What do you want to achieve with FMG Digital, and in your sort of professional career? What do you see sort of the outline sort of looking like? What's the roadmap?
For sure. So I would say in the near future, we want to scale up. I would say it's about 20-25 clients. Said we reached our max at 12. The system wasn't good enough to handle that kind of quantity. So I'm basically stripping the whole business down and building it up. We were chatting a little bit about it earlier. So that's been a big process. A part of that is also finding really good talent who can come on board and help with that. So that we know for a fact that when we get the clients in place, we know for a fact that they're going to get amazing results. Obviously, that also comes down to picking the right clients on my side. But that's a big goal for me this year, is to get to kind of like 20-25 clients. And then I think long term I want to make paid advertising, especially good paid ads, more accessible to a lot more brands, especially like starting out brands. So we have some plans for that, which if anyone's interested, definitely follow along. It might take a little longer than this, but yeah, definitely within the next 5 years I want to have something in place that'll help them.
Do you think that can potentially dilute the business offering that you're trying to give?
To a point. Essentially, we are wanting to work with slightly more high ticket clients who can also afford bigger ad spend. That way we can be a lot more personal. We can provide better quality service, as well as also get them better results, because there are like thresholds when it comes to running ads. Like if you think about it, when you run an ad, you basically are going to auction every time, and you're saying, okay, cool, this is the piece of communication that I want to get in front of this kind of person, but I'm only willing to bid X amount for it. So therefore, obviously, if you're bidding 100 Rand and someone else is bidding 200 Rand, any of these platforms will go, okay, but I'm going to show the one who's bidding 200 Rand, I'm going to show them first, because essentially like they're paying me more. So that's how it works. So yeah, with brands that are smaller, like we've had amazing results. We've had brands who like are spending like 500 Rand a day, and we're getting like absolute killer results. We've had brands spending like upwards of like we've even had brands spending like €1,000 now, which is like 20,000 Rand a day on ads, and getting amazing results. But that obviously allows them to do even better, because now they're in the top like percentage of whatever their niche is. So yeah, I don't see it cannibalizing our current offering. If anything, it'll probably add to it. So we often get a lot of clients who like it ends up being too expensive with our like agency offering, and like let's say the amount that they can spend on ads. So in that case, it actually opens up a whole new avenue to potentially look at that, which is something we're exploring now. But it will take a while. Probably like the next year to 2 years, we'll have something properly solid in place. So looking at launching something towards middle of the end of year, which will be like more of a beta phase thing, and see how that goes. And then I say the long-term play is more like venture capital side of things. So actually buying and getting involved in some brands, being part of those teams that we can scale up. And just being, I think my big thing is I really want to be involved in taking a brand kind of from like grassroots to being like the number one in its specific niche, at least on like a national scale. That would be incredible.
I think there's something special there, because it's essentially not your baby, but if you feel like you've kind of watched everything sort of grow, it's a very rewarding sort of process. I'd imagine. Hopefully we get to that stage.
Exactly.
And personally, I think to wrap up, obviously, I think you've outlined a couple of quite audacious, especially physically, goals that you sort of set yourself. Is there anything on the horizon that you've got planned that you want to pursue?
At the moment, nothing. I know that'll probably, I mean, you know me, that'll probably change within a couple months. I'm quite keen to do a marathon. I don't know if it'll be this year, but definitely next year sometime. Yeah, maybe like aim for like I want to hit like a sub 3 hour marathon, which at my weight is quite a big thing to go for.
And for anyone who doesn't know running metrics, sub 3 hours for someone who's not like been a hardcore runner their whole lives is insane. So that is just, wow.
It's tough. So I mean, I'm putting it out there. It'll probably, whether it's this year or next year, like I'm quite keen to do something intense like that. I also have actually, my godmom, she does a lot of hikes in like the Himalayas and the Andes, and she's done like all the major mountain ranges. So I mean, her and I, we've always spoke about doing Kilimanjaro one day. So that could also be on the horizon. We'll see. It's a little bit different because not necessarily like there's definitely fitness attached to it, but it's not like hardcore like, you know, running or like this kind of event. It'll be more of a mental, I guess physical as well. But yeah, I'm quite excited to potentially do something like that as well. But we'll see.
Absolutely impressive. I'm going to say scared and excited to see what you do set your targets at. I think that's a fantastic place to sort of wrap it up. James, thank you so much for joining me here today and giving me the privilege of being the first person to come on to this new venture that I'm trying out. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for inspiring me, continuing to push me, and being a great friend, business motivator, and I'm going to say fitness guru who kicks my ass every now and then into shape.
No, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me here. And I honestly feel very, very blessed and honored to be the first guest on this podcast. I know it's been something we've been speaking about for a while. So I'm also just mad proud of you for taking the action to make it happen. And yeah, I mean, for anyone who obviously you can't see the setup here, but it is incredibly impressive. For anyone that knows Matt is a man of detail. And yeah, right now there's lights everywhere. We've got multiple camera angles. There's plants everywhere. It's exceptionally well done. So well done to you. It's very, very inspiring and impressive, Maddie. Well done.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. To everyone watching, thank you for joining. If you've made it this far, there might be something wrong with you, or we might be vaguely interesting. I'm hoping it's the latter. Thank you for being a part of this journey from early on, whether you're joining later or joining from sort of day one. I hope that this is something that I can continue to develop and showcase and bring on people and listen to stories that are exciting and inspiring to me, but hopefully that can bring value to you too. So I just want to say thank you very much from me. I'm excited to see where this goes, and yeah, all the best. Why should I end it like that?
Let's do multiple takes.